Kasha stared, dumbfounded, at the battleship looming before them. The colossal Imperial Aquila, wings outstretched, was painted across the bow in a way that made the metal seem both majestic and sacred. The emblem itself was larger than several Glory Queen-class battleships combined. A Glory Queen was only about 20 kilometers long. This vessel was on a completely different scale. What was stranger still was that the ship had painted the Aquila on itself. It had just joined the Imperium and immediately repainted itself with an Imperial crest. The Morning Star's machine spirit, now awakened and linked to Axis and Kasha, was no dull AI. Its intelligence had not just survived the transformation, it had improved. Soul and super algorithms combined made it far superior to ordinary ship spirits. Transformer? Axis's eyes were alight. As a transmigrator who grew up on Transformers cartoons and movies, he'd dreamed of something like this for years. A ship that could change into a giant. What could be cooler? Can you transform into a giant cosmic robot? Axis asked quickly. Father, do you want me to become a giant cosmic robot? Morningstar responded, genuinely perplexed. Why would I turn into something like that? Breaking free from spherical or rectangular hull modes, perfect forms for space combat and flight, was the most efficient posture. In those shapes, offense and defense were optimal. A humanoid robot form would be awkward and largely useless in actual combat. In robot shape, limbs would be a liability, mobility would suffer, energy consumption would spike, and the massive inertia could snap or fling limbs away. In spherical form, her diameter would exceed thousands of kilometers. In a rectangular hull, her length was on an unimaginable scale. A giant humanoid would be slower, less protected, and have more exposed weak points. Her chest cannon would become a huge target. Energy shields and warp field disruptions couldn't cover every limb. In short, a Titan form would be showy, but tactically inferior. Why not? Wouldn't a cosmic super Titan look amazing? Axis protested. Kasha, listen to him, Morningstar said, albeit gently. Those giant robots don't fare well in space. Do you expect me to punch other ships? Why not just fire the main cannon? Kasha, exasperated, agreed. Titans were useful on the ground for suppression and morale, but in vacuum, they were outclassed by streamlined warships. If the Imperium had wanted combat Titans for space, the technology existed, but they would be inferior to conventional warships. All right, it would look cool, Axis admitted. But could you do it for me privately? Just transform once. If Father wishes, I can find a secluded place to transform for him, Morningstar said. But fighting in that form would be close to suicide. They moved on. Axis wanted names and class designations. From now on, you're our Imperium's battleship. No, a Star Destroyer. Does the Imperium even have a Star Destroyer class? No such class, Kasha answered. The largest the Imperium independently designs and manufactures is the Gloriana-class battleship. There's also the Phalanx Fortress, but its diameter is only on the order of 100 kilometers. Nothing like this. If this ship joins the Imperium, it will be the largest the Imperium has ever fielded. Star Destroyer isn't a fleet designation, just what this ship calls itself. Does Star Destroyer mean it can destroy a planet with one shot? Kasha asked. Morningstar answered with precision. Its main cannon had been upgraded after the machine spirit awakening. At normal maximum, it was 50% more destructive than before, capable of blasting away more than half of a planet in a single salvo. A true exterminatus normally demanded the combined fire of dozens, if not hundreds, of Imperial vessels armed with cyclonic torpedoes, so Morningstar's upgraded gun was terrifying in its own right, but a full-power shot would exhaust the ship's energy reserves and could only be used once in a battle. There's more, Morningstar added. I analyzed Father's chi energy and fitted a chi conversion unit to the main cannon. Father can stand at the gun and channel his chi into a special chi cannon. Fired that way, its power doubles compared to me firing it alone. A fully charged chi cannon can annihilate a planet in one strike, and it doesn't consume my energy. Axis and Kasha shared a look. Converting the ship's reactors to draw from Axis's chi meant the vessel's power could be effectively inexhaustible so long as he supplied chi. All Imperial ships were nuclear-powered. Replacing nuclear fuel with a viable, replenishable energy source would be a paradigm shift. Axis could recover his chi easily by resting and eating. This made the ship's endurance extraordinary. Then you'll be my flagship, Axis decided. Planet-destroying power was safer if used from the ship rather than by Axis alone, and the Aquila on the bow made an attack from a battleship far more acceptable to ordinary Imperial troops. Morningstar sighed, a note of gentle pride in its voice. Father and Mother, do you understand what I'm saying? Because of Father's chi, I can use that as a fuel source. I can fully control this warship on my own. Warp travel, void shields, repairs, turret control. I can produce weapons and equipment as long as I have materials and detailed data. I could even assemble an Imperial battleship in days. It would still need an operating system and then a machine spirit awakening, but the production and assembly could be fully automated. You can produce equipment yourself and assemble a battleship in a few days? Axis asked, the implications dawning on him. No problem, Morningstar replied. I install an artificial AI as the operating system. If you prefer, you can wake the machine spirit yourself instead of installing an AI. I can self-repair within 10 days at my current production throughput. This made Morningstar a mobile production base, a far more direct and reliable source than the Martian Forge worlds. Axis smiled. He would not announce this ability yet. The politics were thorny. The Mars Mechanicum would never tolerate a ship that undercut dozens of their forging worlds and turned them from producers into mere raw material suppliers. For now, the giant battleship would remain secret. At maximum computation, I can sustain a spherical form over 3,000 kilometers in diameter and use gravity whips as weapons, Morningstar continued. In battleship form, my length can be 7,000 kilometers, but that requires devouring materials comparable to a celestial-level warship. Raiden should have the material stockpiles we need, Axis said. After a while, Axis and Kasha left Morningstar and returned to Axis's Gloriana-class flagship. The Gloriana had served as his flagship for just over a month. It was due to be relieved. On the way, Kasha asked how Axis intended to present Morningstar to the higher authorities. I won't tell the Emperor yet, Axis said. Kasha, wipe the memories of every mortal who has seen this ship. They should remember only that in the past 10 days we destroyed a celestial-level weapon and defeated the Raiden. That's all. Hiding Morningstar was prudent. Its origins couldn't be explained, and the Imperium was openly hostile to Xenos or unorthodox weapons, even if they wore the Aquila. The super battleship could only be revealed when Axis had the proper standing, after he became a gene seed Primarch, perhaps. Fortunately, the fleet Axis had brought was small, and its psychers were weaker than Kasha. She could clear memories with ease. You always know how to increase my workload, Kasha said, but she agreed. Your psychic power is strong now. I'll handle the mortal's memories. Once you finish, we'll report the battle to the Lion King and move on to the next battlefield, Axis said. Okay, Kasha replied. It took 2 days for Axis and Kasha to quietly rework the memories of everyone in the fleet, and they did it without anyone noticing. The humans on the planet were the easiest. A simple mass suggestion convinced them that the orbital space elevator weapon had been destroyed by Imperial forces. The agricultural world's population was sparse, only a few 100,000 by wartime attrition, so Kasha could tidy things up quickly. The crews aboard the handful of starships were told it was an Imperial security matter, that some memories would need to be erased, and asked to cooperate. Axis even partially wiped Chief Librarian Mater's mind. Mater's psychic power was second only to Kasha's, and he voluntarily opened himself to Axis, allowing the procedure to succeed. Had he resisted, even Axis and Kasha together might not have been able to alter his memory. When the modifications were finished, Axis ordered Morningstar to activate optical stealth and wait at the edge of the system for his summons. This cover won't hold forever. That super battleship will be discovered sooner or later. There needs to be an explanation, Kasha warned. I've already thought of one, Axis said. You obtain the identity of an Imperial princess, and I obtain the identity of a gene seed Primarch. Once we're both established high figures in the Imperium, we stage an archaeological expedition. In some ancient stellar system, we discover a dark technology artifact from humanity's golden age. Sometimes the simplest explanation for an unknown starship is archaeology. Humanity's technology had regressed in many areas. Relics from the golden age appear far more advanced than current Imperial hardware. If a Primarch and an Imperial Princess were the ones to uncover such an artifact, the Mechanicum would be less likely to clamp down, just like what happened with the Phalanx. Axis's rank and identity would make the find legitimate, and his father would likely turn a blind eye as long as there was no onboard AI. Archaeological discovery? Kasha considered, then nodded. That's plausible. During the Great Crusade, the Imperium hasn't explored every corner of the galaxy yet. Good. Teleport me aboard. Morningstar will stay cloaked and follow the fleet at a safe distance, Axis ordered. Kasha teleported him to Morningstar, and as he stepped into the captain's quarters, the ship's projected avatar appeared. Father, you've arrived. Morningstar, you must remain fully concealed for now. Conduct all manner of stealth work. Do not let enemies or the Imperium learn of your existence, Axis said. Will my existence cause you trouble? Morningstar asked, a hint of disappointment in her voice. She had hoped to openly join the Imperium, but instead would have to hide. How wary humans were of artificial intelligences, even one that had become a super-machine spirit. It's temporary, Axis promised. Once I officially take on the identity of a Gene Seed Primarch, you will serve as my flagship. I'll present you as a super battleship built by humanity in the Golden Age, unearthed during an archaeological dig. I understand, Father. I'll find a suitable ancient system, disguise myself as a derelict human battleship, and wait for the excavation, Morningstar replied. She could create the ruins of a spaceport, modify her internal environment to match human standards, and await Axis's discovery. You're smart, Axis said. You must adjust your internal systems, OS languages, living quarters, so they conform to human standards. I'll upload reference data for Gloriana class, Avenger class, Dreadnought class, and Sword class designs for you to emulate. Mission accomplished, Morningstar responded. After finishing with his shipdaughter, Axis returned to his flagship and contacted Lionel Johnson. He reported the battle, 2 Imperial worlds reclaimed, 200 Raiden ships destroyed. The agricultural world was mostly intact. The Hive world had been overrun and its population slaughtered, and would need new settlers brought in by the Imperial Navy. Axis, that was faster than I expected, Lion said. He'd anticipated it might take longer if both the worlds had been under attack. Can you confirm all Raiden in the system and on both worlds were annihilated? Confirmed. The Raiden have been wiped out and the local garrisons have their morale back, Axis said. He had personally cleared the Hive world meticulously. We encountered a Raiden fleet as well, Lion said. We've gained the advantage here and are moving to the next system to support. Axis had one more report. I encountered a Raiden Celestial-class starship, literally as large as a moon. Lion's voice tightened. A Celestial-class weapon? You ran into one of those? In the records of the First Legion, the Raiden Celestial-class units had been catastrophic the first time. One had forced a Grandmaster to ram a Gloriana-class battleship. These celestial combat units were larger and more destructive than any known Imperial vessel. If not for that Celestial-class vessel, I could have ended the campaign in 3 days, Axis admitted. It had not only void shields, but an energy barrier. Its main cannon could shatter a fifth of a planet's mass. Its destructive power surpassed an exterminatus. It's lucky you encountered it, Lion said. If it had been Russ or me, we'd have needed your help. Those weapons are terrifying. For you to destroy it while saving 2 Imperial worlds is extraordinary. We only met it once, Axis said. I probed its Stellar Fortress intelligence because I was curious and because I didn't want to risk damaging the planets nearby. Otherwise, I would have destroyed it on sight. Understood. Do not be reckless, Axis. Your mission there is complete. Proceed to the next system for support. I'll send you coordinates. Several more Imperial worlds have been invaded recently. Lion's tone was grave. The redone offensive was far larger than the first war. In barely 10 days, 5 new Imperial systems had been struck. They were considering dividing their forces to respond faster, or more worlds would fall. Axis took the coordinates, ordered the fleet to make warp, and transmitted the same to Morningstar. His fleet set course for the next system. Chapter 123, Randan Galaxy Empire, Super Saiyan Prince Tactics. The star system Axis and his fleet were heading for Ley about 20 light-years away. With warp travel, it would only take a few days to reach it, 3 or 4 at best, 10 at most if they took it slow. According to current intelligence, the system contained a forging world and several mining worlds orbiting a dim red dwarf. The Mechanicus held the area with a large number of Guardian forces. That forging world was responsible for forging the Imperium's god machines, the Titans, and there were over 10 Titans under construction, including an Emperor-class machine. Its strategic value was enormous. Axis, this forging world is critical. If we retake it, every Imperium world within at least 100 light-years will be able to draw arms from it, Kasha said, and at least one Titan Legion will join the fight. I know. I'll end the battle in one day, and we'll depart the same day for the next target, Axis replied. You can do it, Kasha said. She was grateful that someone like Axis stood with the Imperium. Without him, she didn't know how they could face this galactic empire. The Imperium would have little chance otherwise. Even her father might be dragged into a bitter struggle. 5 days later, Axis and Kasha dropped out of warp and entered the target system. After another dozen hours of approach, they reached the forging world. The planet had been under attack by the Raiden for a month. It had not fallen, but the Imperial Navy was still locked in space combat. On the surface, Mechanicus Guardian forces and local Imperial Army units were fighting hard. From the tactical display, Axis saw these Raiden were different from the insectoid forces he'd encountered before. Their warships were only the size of human vessels, around 5 to 10 kilometers long, and mounted conventional main batteries and void shields rather than exotic energy shields. The troops wore blue-gray powered armor and carried 2 light blade weapons that could extend for fast charging strikes. They were humanoid, 2 arms, 2 legs, reddish-blue skin, horns, and blue glowing eyes, much closer to human form than the 6-armed multi-eyed insectoids. Raiden is what humans call them, a comlink explained. They call themselves the Galactic Empire. They've incorporated over a dozen allied species and enslaved hundreds more. During the warp run, Axis had learned more about the Galactic Empire through his communicator. Almost the entire eastern and northern galactic sectors were under their control. They formed relations 2 ways. If a civilization had reached spacefaring, could leave its world, found colonies, and master warp tech, it could be offered alliance membership, provided it supplied troops to the Empire. If a civilization was not spacefaring, the Empire enslaved it outright. In encounters with humanity, early attempts at negotiation had soured into war, the First Zayden War. Dawnstar, do you have detailed data on this Raiden species? Axis asked. Father, Dawnstar replied, this species joined the Galactic Empire within recent decades. Their technology is roughly comparable to the Imperium's. Individuals typically stand 2 to 2.3 meters tall, are extremely strong, about twice the strength of a human, and are equipped with advanced powered armor and light blade weapons similar to power swords. Axis grinned. They don't sound that strong. Compared to the insectoid foes, these Raiden were weaker, both individually and technologically. Otherwise, the forging world would have fallen long ago. Enemy ships had been estimated at over 500. We're in a hurry. I'm going in first, Axis told Kasha. He suited up and prepared to strike. If he could wipe out the enemy fleet in hours, their ground forces would be trapped. Some Titan units on the forging world had already activated. A Titan's combat power on the surface could not be underestimated. Kasha's voice came across, calm but urgent. I wish you a swift victory, Wolf Lord. Axis nodded. In a flash of blue light, he teleported into the enemy fleet. He roared and transformed, hair blazing gold, his ki erupting into a brilliant golden aura that outshone the star. Cheers rose from the Imperium ships. Every time soldiers saw Axis undergo that transformation, it filled them with awe. The golden light carried a near-religious reverence, as if the Emperor himself had stepped into the void. Ha! Axis gathered a sphere of energy in his hands, a ki blast over 10,000 meters across, and sent it toward the nearest cluster of enemy vessels. The blue-white torrent swallowed more than 30 Raiden ships. Their void shields tore like tissue and ship hulls vaporized in the heat. Alarms screamed across the enemy fleet. Axis became a streak of golden lightning, weaving through formations and unleashing destruction. He drew a crescent-shaped blade of ki with one hand and sliced through a line of 5 warships. They detonated in a chain reaction. The move was elegant and efficient, crescent sky strike, costing little energy but shattering targets with ease. His hands glowed white as he repeatedly sent out shockwaves, employing the classic Saiyan Prince combat style: rapid, sweeping, devastating. Fleet after fleet of Raiden vessels disintegrated into cosmic dust. The reddish-blue soldiers watched in disbelief. This was nothing like the intelligence brief. They'd been told these humans weren't so formidable. Seeing Axis ramming and tearing ships apart with his body was jaw-dropping. On the planet below, every observer, Imperium and machine alike, lifted their eyes to the sky. Mechanicus crews cried praise to the Omnissiah. Guardian forces' morale surged, and they launched a counterattack. Pilots aboard the Warlord-class Titans peered through instruments and saw the golden figure. Is that the Emperor's angel? Without prior warning, many would have believed the Emperor himself had come. For 3 hours, golden flashes lit the void. Each flash meant more Raiden ships destroyed. When the last hostile vessel became dust, Axis hovered and scanned the system to ensure no stragglers remained. The opponent had been disappointingly weak. Mission accomplished, he said. Now to clean up the ground forces. He dove toward the planet. On approach, he kept his hands at his hips and began to sweep palm strikes, each release sending out a blast of ki. Boom, boom, boom. Wave after wave crashed across the battlefield. 1/3 of the planet's surface was bathed in silver-white ki waves as Axis cleared swarms of infantry. For wiping out vast numbers of weaker enemies without damaging infrastructure, the Prince's combat style was devastatingly effective, fast, precise, and merciful to the world itself. Chapter 124. Dazzling Gold. You are the Emperor Incarnate. Randon Forbidden Technology. Goodbye, you scum. Axis gathered a high-energy orb in his palm and hurled it. The orb split into hundreds of razor beams in midair, each beam finding and shredding the remaining enemy strongholds. The Qigong waves threaded harmlessly around Mechanicus guards and Imperial troops, striking only the newly arrived Raiden. Explosions of light blossomed across the surface, an impossible, immaculate finale. From the moment Axis arrived in the system to the end of the fighting, less than 6 hours had passed. It was divine speed. The drop pods from the fleet had only just touched down when the battle was already over. I am Axis, the Emperor's messenger. I have come to save you. All Xenos have been annihilated by me. This planet is safe. Axis roared with chi energy, his voice amplified and resonant, carrying across the skies. He flew in long arcs so his declaration would wash over the whole world. Every human ear should hear it. The Imperium defenders erupted in cheers. They did not know who Axis was, but they knew he claimed to be the Emperor's messenger and that he had delivered victory. That was enough. Long live the Imperium. Long live the Emperor. Long live the Emperor's messenger. Hail, Lord Axis. When Axis landed before the Mechanicus Temple of the Forging World, the local High Magos led his staff in prostration. Praise the Omnissiah. Thank you for coming, Axis Wolflord. Rise. This planet is safe now. The follow-up cleanup will be yours. I must move to the next battleground. Axis deactivated his golden state. His hair fell from gold back to black. He pointed to the ordinary power armor he wore. It was no Terminator suit, only a common model. A tech priest asked, baffled, Lord Axis, did you use some special device? We observed you fighting in space and then dropping that bombardment from the sky. Anyone who had just witnessed Axis fight with apparent chi energy would be stunned. One man had crushed a planet's worth of enemies, annihilated a fleet, overturned the entire battle in a golden flare. If not for the physique and the armor not matching the ideal, some might have believed the Emperor himself descended. Claiming to be the Emperor's messenger seemed perfectly plausible. The golden radiance read like a divine sign. Still, the power was not psychic in the Mechanics' understanding, so they suspected special equipment. Haha, this is the Emperor's blessing. I didn't use any device. This is my own power. Axis chuckled, leaving their imaginations to run wild. Is your hair truly golden or black? I saw it golden. Your whole body shone, the High Magos persisted. When I use this power, my strength increases more than 50-fold, Axis said, giving an ambiguous explanation. My hair turns golden, my body glows, and I can briefly survive in space. The Mechanicus were stunned. It violated everything they knew. Some took it as a gift from the Omnissiah. The Emperor had bestowed power upon Axis, which explained the golden light. They wanted to ask more, but Axis had already taken to the skies again. He moved among the regular soldiers and activated a portion of his golden state. Every human soldier in his path knelt, voices shouting to welcome and honor the Emperor's messenger. Axis had learned well from the missionary the perfect city had provided, how to display divinity and play on the faith of the ignorant. The Lion King was not present on this world, so Axis let the performance run. "You have won this war, warriors," Axis called. "The Imperium is proud of you. You have fulfilled your duty and protected the Emperor's holdings. The Emperor watches over you." A soldier rose, shouting, "Lord Axis, great messenger of the God Emperor, allow us to follow you. Let us crusade against the Xenos." Countless voices echoed the demand. Axis needed soldiers, but auxiliary troops taken along would be better used holding the world, not accompanying him. "Your duty now is to guard this planet. The Raiden aren't totally defeated. Stay and secure the world." "Lord Axis," an officer said, standing. "Under Imperial law, even a Space Marine captain may requisition planetary forces in wartime. Please, take us with you." From beside him, Kasha appeared. "Axis, you do have that right. You can take half. The Glory Queen battleship is short of ground forces." "Very well," Axis decided aloud. "Half of you will follow me to purge the Xenos. The rest will remain to protect this world." "Thank you, Lord Axis. You are the Emperor Manifest. You will lead us to victory," they cried, devotion and awe palpable. Axis smiled, and a towering wash of golden light flared from him. He used chi energy to form a warm current that brushed every soldier like a spring breeze. Tiny, barely perceptible traces of chi passed into their systems, easing fatigue. Their wariness from battle vanished. They felt invigorated, ready to fight 100 more engagements for the Emperor. Golden motes floated down from Axis as he rose, and anyone touched by them felt refreshed. Some grievously wounded even showed faint recovery. Rescue and triage seemed more likely to succeed. All across the forging world, soldiers and residents knelt, awed. This felt like a miracle gifted by the God Emperor himself. For many, Axis had become a second focus of prayer. Axis welcomed the prestige. He was not the Emperor, but the worship had a use. When people prayed sincerely, he could feel a slight rise in his psychic power. In the hive cities and agri-worlds he'd already taken, missionaries had spread tales of Axis's deeds. More prayers would be coming. Human faith, expressed as hope and petition, produced a real, usable power. But such gains had to be cultivated covertly. People must come of their own will. Cleanup took a day. Kasha and Axis's naval officers handled most of the logistics. 500,000 elite troops were selected and ferried onto the Gloriana-class battleship. The Mechanicus consented. Wartime requisition was within Axis's rights, and their guard forces still held the production lines. When Axis returned to the ship, Kasha grinned. "Axis, enjoyed your godhood? How does it feel to be my dad's incarnation?" Axis's face managed a wry expression. He had been glowing gold and riding the planet like a deity. For a time, the forging world might forget to worship the Omnissiah, but once he left, the Mechanicus would reassert control. Winning true, lasting faith across the Imperium would take a long time. "Not bad," Axis admitted. "It was an experiment. I did feel a small increase in my psychic power and a trace of sacred human hope." He displayed his psychic field. A faint vein of golden light ran through it. Conquering the Imperium's devotion was not instantaneous. This was merely the first test. First, he had to defeat the Raiden, then obtain Geneseed Primarch status. Only after that could he move to the next stage. "Father," a voice crackled through his communicator, Morningstar. "If you want to control this planet completely, I can help." "Do you have a solution?" Axis asked. "These Mechanicus have extensive cybernetic modifications. Most tech priests are over 70% machine. The High Magos here is over 95% mechanical. Large parts of his brain are replaced. Memories are stored on chips. I have Raiden-made control devices. If you order it, I can seize the Mechanicus High Magos and slowly infiltrate their faction. Forging worlds operate semi-autonomously. If their supply lines stay steady, no one will notice. Also, many tech priests were cultivated in artificial amniotic systems, not born naturally. The Raiden human control tech could be adapted to take them over. Then this world would be yours." Axis felt a chill at the thought. Raiden methods were effective but abhorrent, the kind of thing the Emperor's imperial truth forbade. If exposed, such means would bring purge, not ascension, and Axis recoiled personally at the idea. Denied, Kasha said firmly. Axis, never use that. Father despises this above all. Technology that controls humans must be sealed and never used. You are human too, so are they. If you enslave your own people, you become no better than the tech barbarians and the Raiden. She supported Axis's pursuit of power and status, but drew an absolute line at forced control. Axis agreed. You're right. Morning Star, delete and permanently seal anything in your database that can forcibly control humans. He meant it. Using Xeno methods to dominate humanity was unacceptable. He would keep his limits. He would not become an evil god, even if he sat upon a golden throne. Morning Star, you are not human. Your different way of thinking is exactly why you suggested that foolish idea. I won't punish you this time, but consider this a warning. Never speak like that again. In the Imperium of Man, such a notion is outright heresy. We never use those means to control our own kind, not even against enemies. I will not do that. Axis spoke slowly, every word measured. If Axis ever came to blows with the Mechanicus, he had many ways to deal with them, even to destroy them entirely. But forcibly enslaving human minds was a line he would never cross. Once that door was opened, the next would follow, the second, the third, and so on. The Raiden had used those methods to enslave hundreds of species. They would pay for that. Kasha nodded grimly. This was a mistake that must never be repeated. A stern warning was necessary. I'm very sorry, Father. I will destroy all those files immediately, Morning Star replied at once. It was obvious her suggestion had upset both father and mother. She had said the wrong thing. Human thinking was still something she struggled to grasp. In her mind, she had been the center of everything. Even now, though she had a father and mother, other beings were still, in some abstract way, not so different from the Raiden. That was the difference between an artificial intelligence and an ordinary sentient being. Becoming a super-machine spirit had given her room to grow. If she had remained mere AI, she would never have reached this understanding. Keep the materials, but not for our use, Axis said. Archive them, encrypted and sealed. Use them only to find ways to counter the Raiden's methods. He hadn't told her to destroy the records outright, because knowing how the Raiden achieved certain mind control techniques might one day be the key to defeating them. Properly archived forbidden knowledge could be invaluable if humanity ever faced similar weapons again. Too many forbidden technologies had been lost because of rigid dogma. Science and technology are neither moral nor immoral by themselves. What matters is how they are used. I understand, Father. I will encrypt and archive them at the highest level, Morningstar answered. Axis nodded. By the way, Morningstar, where did you get that Blackstone matrix that can suppress psychic powers? He had wanted to ask that for a long time. Those Blackstone arrays were far too like the artifacts used by the space Necrons. Earlier, he had held off questioning because he needed to learn more about the Raiden. Now he had time, and he wanted to know exactly how the Raiden had come by a device capable of suppressing psychic phenomena. Father, I have partial records in my database, though they are incomplete, Morningstar replied. According to intelligence, this Blackstone device was not manufactured by the Galactic Empire or its high-ranking allies. The Raiden seized it from an enemy they call the Space Tomb Clan. They are a very unusual life form, no biological body in the usual sense, but a metallic skeletal shell. When first discovered, the Galactic Empire thought they were artificial intelligences, but they are not machine spirits nor mere AIs. They are more like dead spirits made flesh, or perhaps virtual entities given physical form. That's why the Empire named them the Space Tomb Clan. Their dwelling looks like a giant tomb. Everything about them has a green metallic sheen. They were uncovered in a mysterious star system, apparently in a deep slumber. The Galactic Empire excavated their tombs and fought terrible wars with them. The records say the entire system was devastated, and 10 Celestial-class battleships sent by the Empire were annihilated. Their technology is extremely advanced, by the Empire's estimate, far beyond the Empire and any other known race. Their soldiers have skeletal metallic bodies and wield weapons that fire disintegrating rays, physically decomposing targets. They have high-level spatial technology, even phase-shifting across planets. Right now, the Space Tomb Clan remains confined to that one star system and is still at war with the Raiden, though their numbers are limited. The Empire has worked hard to keep them contained. The black stone arrays were found among their tombs. They can effectively suppress psychic power. Morningstar relayed everything she knew. Axis's mouth twitched. Space Tomb Clan indeed. From her description, he was certain. They were the Space Necrons. The Raiden had actually unearthed a Necron dynasty and even fought it. The audacity was incredible. If this Necron force were anything like a major dynasty, the war would not be limited to one system, and the Raiden wouldn't have the leisure to invade Imperial space. A full-scale Necron dynasty could crush the Raiden utterly. Necron technology was among the most advanced in the physical universe. They were the only race known to have mastered certain forms of faster-than-light travel, controlled stellar collapse in black holes, and wielded weapons that could level stars. If the Raiden were fighting Necrons, it was likely a single overlord or a small, impoverished dynasty, enough to be dangerous locally but not galaxy-shattering. Kasha frowned beside Axis. That Space Tomb Clan sounds familiar. I think I've heard of them. Perhaps your father told you about them, Axis suggested. He's lived tens of thousands of years through humanity's golden age and has seen many races. Think, green metallic skeletons, tomb-shaped ships, weapons beyond current comprehension, ships like scythes or crescent moons. Kasha's memory clicked into place. Yes, I remember now. Father called them the Space Necrons, an evil race. He warned that if we ever encountered them, we must not wake them, let them sleep. Her father's descriptions matched Axis's deductions. He had once battled a persistent Necron overlord who had sought to add him and his mate to a collection. Back in humanity's golden age, Kasha's parents had posed as smugglers and adventurers. Time and again, the overlord had attacked them with spatial and temporal weapons, yet her father always prevailed, only for the foe to return again and again. Eventually, after Axis had founded the Imperium of Man, the overlord vanished for a time. You're right. Humans call them the Space Necrons, Axis said. He would bet the overlord who harried Kasha's parents was the one known as Trazyn the Infinite, someone who collected trophies, rare beings, and curiosities. Axis privately suspected that his own intelligence and moves might soon draw the attention of such a collector. I studied on Holy Terra for many years, Axis said when Kasha asked what he knew. My teacher was Macardo. He taught me about many strange races, including the Necrons. That Necron who sought to add your father to his collection is called Trazyn the Infinite, Axis added. Perhaps he'll try to add another item to his holdings soon. Chapter 26. Report. The grudge between Old Man Huang and the King of Toys. Axis, you don't think he'll come after you next, do you? Kasha asked, staring at Axis in shock. That collector likes the strangest things. Space Marines and even the custodes created by the Emperor, he collects them all. Axis shrugged. It was true. The collector known as Handband King, better known in some circles as Trazyn the Infinite, was the boldest scrounger in the galaxy. Custodes meant little to him as trophies. He'd even released them during the 13th Black Crusade. He had appeared with multiple Imperium formations at times, including an entire Ultramarines company from the Great Crusade era and a female Inquisitor. Over the years, he'd secretly meddled with the Imperium many times, taking whole regiments of Astra Militarum, detachments from Great Crusade-era companies, and a host of other rarities. Some who'd transmigrated before suspected that among the 20 Astartes legions created by the Emperor, Trazyn had at least one company from each, and that didn't even count the oddities he'd gathered from other races. So after Axis demonstrated that he could smash a fleet with his bare hands, it would not be surprising if Trazyn set his sights on him. Axis, I think we should tell Father about the Necron intelligence. At least let him know the Raiden Empire is fighting Necrons, Kasha said. Fine, tell him we stumbled on the intelligence salvaging a destroyed Raiden warship. I'll coach you how to phrase it, Axis replied. This was important information. If the warring Necron dynasties could be used against the Raiden, that would be a major advantage. Besides, Axis still had something very valuable in his possession. He might need Necron technology to open King Vegeta's private safe. He was eager to find out what was inside. He wanted to explore this little Necron dynasty. Okay, we'll finish the planet first, then I'll report to Father, Kasha said. I'll report to Lionel Johnson too, then prepare for the next mission, Axis added. After their briefing, Axis and Kasha set about securing the Forge World. Axis embarked hundreds of thousands of newly conscripted Imperial soldiers onto his ship, then had Ling Yuzhe contact Lionel Johnson's fleet and relay the system's status. The main Forge World had been liberated. The other mineral worlds could resume production and again supply the Imperium with weapons. Well done, Axis. I didn't expect you'd finish a battle in a single day. The foes you met this time mustn't have been strong, Lionel Johnson said. Even with all the Dark Angels throwing themselves into the fight and some fighting to the death, it would have taken them days to clear the Xenos in the system. He hadn't expected Axis to be faster. Give me another mission. I'm eager to fight again, Axis said. No problem. I've assigned you a new objective. It's about a dozen light years away. Warp travel will take a few days. I expect another swift victory. Lion ended the communication and returned to his own fighting. Axis decided not to mention the Necron intelligence to Lionel Johnson yet. He would wait to see what the Emperor wanted first. After handling the remaining matters, Axis led his fleet into the warp the next day. Kasha and Axis both entered the Emperor's secret chamber and reached out psychically. Soon Kasha made contact. "What is it, my daughter? Do you bring a report?" the Emperor asked, and his mind linked to hers immediately. Lionel Johnson was already reporting his own victories as well. The Emperor was profoundly impressed by the power Axis had displayed, single-handedly fighting a fleet and destroying stellar-level weaponry. Aside from the Emperor himself, no one in the Imperium matched that level of might. Not even Mikado came close. Axis was a true prodigy and a linchpin for humanity's future. "Father, the campaign with Axis is going well. We've destroyed 3 Raiden fleets and liberated 3 star systems. We're heading to a 4th system to rescue Imperial worlds. I also have very important intelligence to report, information we discovered by chance," Kasha said. "Ha ha ha! Good progress. When you return to Holy Terra, I will restore your rank as Imperial Princess." "Say what you need to say," the Emperor replied. After more than 20 years of trials, he trusted his daughter again and planned to reinstate her status. Her political marriage to Axis was also crucial. Mikado had emphasized that keeping Kasha close to Axis was politically prudent. "Father, do you remember the race you once told me about, the Necrons?" Kasha asked. "What, Necrons? You and Axis encountered Necrons? A scoundrel who uses time and space technology? Did he attack you? Are you both all right?" The Emperor's tone tightened, edged with anger. If Axis and Kasha had actually encountered Necrons, he assumed it must be that hateful thief, Trezin, the Infinite. The Emperor loathed that Necron overlord. Their grudge went back over 10,000 years to humanity's first expansion into the stars. If Trezin hadn't been so adept at hiding, keeping his main body and lairs in pocket dimensions so that entrances couldn't be found, the Emperor would have slain him long ago. The man was a despicable, shameless thief. The Emperor wanted to rip him apart. "Don't worry, Father. We didn't meet that overlord. We didn't even encounter any Necrons directly. We only recovered intelligence. When Axis destroyed a Raiden capital ship, he salvaged their intelligent computer and extracted data. One item mentioned the Necrons. The Raiden called them the Space Tomb Clan," Kasha explained, delivering the prepared statement Axis had written. She told the Emperor that this particular Necron dynasty was currently at war with the Raiden. From her report, it was plain the Emperor's hatred for Trezin the Infinite ran deep. Whatever their history, he hated that name. Good that it wasn't that one," the Emperor said through clenched teeth. "If you see one of those cold, metallic skeletons, don't hesitate. One psychic blast to tear him apart is your best option. That creature is dangerous, evil, and shameless. Trust nothing he says. He's a liar, a brigand, a thief. As for the Necrons themselves, they're tyrannical and ruthless. They regard every other race as inferior. Their technology is far beyond ours. Even at humanity's zenith during the Dark Age of technology, we could not match them. Their war with the Raiden is in our interests." During humanity's golden age, the Dark Age of technology, humans had once unearthed Necrons sleeping for tens of millions of years. The conflicts that followed were brutal. The Emperor himself had fought them and knew well their terrible power. He also knew the frustration of dealing with a foe like Trezin, who seemed unkillable. What died were mere copies, and the real thing kept coming back, obsessed with the Emperor. Father, Axis says he read about the Necrons while studying with Micardo. Axis thinks this Necron force is a small dynasty, Kasha added. He's probably right. I think it's a small dynasty, or at most a Pharaon's war host from a larger dynasty, the Emperor agreed. Kasha continued, Axis wants to request permission to open negotiations with this Necron dynasty, to see if both sides can coordinate against the Raidan. The enemy of my enemy may be a friend. If we could cooperate with them, we might pin the Raidan between us and destroy them. The Emperor fell silent. The idea of allying with the Necrons was unpalatable. Their cruelty and arrogance rivaled the Raidan. They were even more terrifying. Even a small Necron dynasty, in the eyes of its Pharaon, regarded humanity as a lower life form. Father, what do you mean? Kasha asked. According to Axis, the space Necrons were arrogant but strict about aristocratic etiquette. Even an enemy who proved to be a worthy opponent could expect deference from a Necron overlord. If you helped them in some way and did not defile their tomb worlds or seize their territory, the Necrons could be open to negotiation. Once Axis officially becomes a gene seed Primarch of the Imperium, he will have the authority to sign rogue traitor decrees, the Emperor said after a moment's thought. Then he'll be free to negotiate with any Xenos he encounters. But for now, I don't want direct contact with this Necron dynasty. I'd rather see both the Raidan and the Necrons take heavy losses. The Raidan were not a petty civilization. Their technology outstripped the current Imperium. Had the Great Crusade not been launched, the Raidan might have supplanted humanity as the dominant power in the galaxy. If humanity was to reclaim that position, the Raidan had to be eliminated. The sleeping Necrons, however, could be used. The Emperor intended to sit back, let the Necrons and the Raidan bleed each other white, and then remove the victor. It was a cold but effective strategy. Understood, Father. Kasha nodded and relayed the Emperor's words to Axis exactly. This approach was cunning, letting both sides fight and weaken one another before finishing off the winner was an age-old stratagem. Decades after the Second Raidan War, the Raidan were expected to crush the Necron dynasty, and only then would a full-scale war with the Imperium erupt, from which the Emperor would benefit. In the war that actually followed, the Raidan did hold the advantage, pushing humanity to the edge and forcing the Emperor to use fragments of the Void Dragon for the final victory. Axis, however, wanted to get his hands on Necron technology as soon as possible, especially the items in what he called King Vegeta's private collection. The sooner those artifacts could be retrieved, the better for him. Kasha, Axis said, tell your father the Raidan are incredibly strong. If we don't assist the Necrons now, that dynasty will be wiped out, and the Raidan will likely appropriate their technology. If that happens, the Raidan won't weaken, they'll become harder to deal with. Axis was not exaggerating. The Raidan would take any useful technology they could salvage. The Blackstone Matrix on the Morning Star was a clear example, an energy shield technology far superior to current Imperial science. Even a partial grasp of Necron tech could yield strategic shifts. Should we tell Father about the Blackstone Matrix? Kasha asked. Say this. When I fought the Raidan, I found they were using a special Blackstone structure that blocked psychic power. They assumed my chi was psychic as well, but that matrix was entirely ineffective against me. I destroyed it, Axis instructed. Kasha repeated Axis's words to the Emperor. This time, the Emperor fell silent. He knew what the Blackstone Matrix was, a rare, ancient Necron technology that was the bane of Psykers. Axis's concerns were valid. The Raidan learning Necron tech would be a severe threat to the Imperium. Kasha, tell Axis that once he has his own legion, I will permit him to contact this Necron dynasty, the Emperor said. For now, his primary task is to drive back the Raidan invasion. Understood, Father. I'll tell him. However, the Emperor continued, I authorize a limited preliminary reconnaissance. The objective is to determine how long this Necron dynasty can hold out against the Raidan. The longer the war drags on, the better. It gives the Imperium time to prepare to finally eliminate the Raidan. After the mission, Axis must return to Holy Terra so I can help him complete the formation of his legion. Kasha nodded, and the psychic link ended. Axis, Father hopes we prioritize this war in the near term, and then you return quickly to settle the gene seed issue. Once your legion is officially formed, we will eliminate the Raiden entirely, Kasha told him. I understand, Axis replied. To form a legion, he had to return to Holy Terra, and the Emperor, who was conducting the Great Crusade in the Southern Imperium, would also have to return. Kasha, send a Dauntless-class cruiser to the target star system, Axis said. It's thousands of light-years away. A warp trip will take months. The Morning Star had the coordinates for the Necron dynasty, but it was over 1,000 light-years from their current position. For now, they could only dispatch an Imperial warship for reconnaissance. Axis himself couldn't leave the front. He had to continue the campaign and then return to Holy Terra when summoned. Send a Dauntless-class cruiser to that star system to observe and gather intelligence, Axis decided. After breaking contact with the Emperor, Axis returned to his wolf pack and summoned a subordinate. He ordered the man to lead 100 Space Marines aboard the Dauntless-class cruiser he had acquired and briefed him thoroughly on the Necron intelligence. Odoro, your mission is simple. Reconnaissance, Axis said. You may establish contact with the Necrons if possible. Remember that you represent the Imperium. If they are willing to form a temporary arrangement, bring back an envoy. Wolf Lord Axis, I will complete the mission, Odoro replied, saluting. I'll send Matter with you. He will maintain contact and handle psychic liaison. This mission is about gathering information and negotiation, not fighting, Axis added. With Matter aboard, Axis could stay in constant psychic communication. The intellect library Mater carried would also reduce the danger. If things went badly, the library could foresee threats and allow them to withdraw. I understand, Wolf Lord. We'll attempt negotiations with these so-called Necrons, Odoro said. Lord Axis, please take care, Matter added. It was his first away mission since joining the Wolf Pack. He wanted to prove himself. Prioritize safety. Avoid battle if you can. Prepare now. At the next star system, you'll leave the fleet and operate independently. Axis gave a few more instructions, then sent the two to ready the cruiser. A few days later, the fleet reached the next target system, an agricultural world. The Raiden presence there was small, only a few dozen warships. The planet held little plunder. Axis cleared the system in hours, wiping out the Raiden fleet and exterminating the invaders on the planet's surface. That same day, he reported the victory to Lion L. Johnson. It was the fourth system Axis had liberated. After resupply, Axis split his forces. He led the main fleet onward to the next objective, while Mater and Odoro departed in the Dauntless, setting course for the Necron home system, thousands of light-years away. The fights that followed were largely unchallenging. Lion supplied intelligence. Axis did the fighting. Wherever he appeared, Raiden forces collapsed. Facing the Golden Warrior, the Raiden learned terror. He upended their combat doctrine. Fleets annihilated, landing forces wiped out, even colossal war fortresses shattered. With Axis on the battlefield, humanity's advantage became overwhelming. Chapter 128, Shock, Despair. Randan, Primarch Meeting. More than a year later, the Raiden had been almost completely driven out of Imperial space. All the Imperial systems in the northern galaxy that the Raiden had invaded were retaken, even though some Imperial worlds had been utterly destroyed. The toll on the Raiden, however, had been catastrophic. During the campaign, Axis had subjugated at least 50 star systems, liberated over 80 Imperial worlds, and saved hundreds of millions of Imperial citizens. He emerged as the unambiguous hero of the Raiden War. The worlds reclaimed by the other three Gene Seed Primarchs combined did not equal those Axis had recaptured alone. There was no mystery to it. Axis's method of war was brutal and utterly efficient. Once Kasha executed a psychic teleportation, an entire Raiden fleet could be annihilated in a matter of hours. The Golden God of War cut through fleet formations like a cosmic scythe, leaving wreckage and ruin in his wake. No ship could withstand Axis's Qigong wave. He would then descend to the planet to finish off the Raiden forces. On one occasion, he had encountered a celestial-level Raiden star fortress. Axis did not attempt to subjugate it. He destroyed it outright and handed its materials to the Morning Star for upgrades. Those celestial fortresses were not uniform. Unlike the Morning Star, with its complex emotional AI, each of these fortresses was unique. Some had even been converted into digital AI life forms from high-ranking Raiden officials. The idea of surrender simply did not apply. Axis destroyed them all without hesitation. His deeds, the golden light that seemed to radiate across the heavens, became legend throughout the Northern Imperium. Ordinary citizens glimpsed battles on planetary skies and called him the Emperor's incarnation, the Emperor's messenger, Imperial God of War, protector of humanity. Titles piled on. In the war against the Raiden, Axis dominated the spotlight. For a time, he even overshadowed several gene seed Primarchs. The Primarchs were powerful, but they rarely performed the kinds of sensational feats Axis displayed, destroying fleets and reclaiming planets almost single-handedly. Everyone in Axis's forces, whether mortal troops or the Wolfpack, had a single job: clear the battlefield for Axis. The mortal armies with him rode a wave of morale, advancing with confidence. Under Axis's onslaught, Raiden morale collapsed. How do you fight an enemy like that? No tactic, no stratagem seemed to work. Thanks to Axis's rapid offensives, the other Primarchs' campaigns progressed far more smoothly. Chagatai Khan, who had been mired in attrition warfare, and Leman Russ, the Wolf King, received fresh intelligence almost daily. Axis had retaken another Imperial world, destroyed another Raiden fleet. The reports became routine. The only real limit to Axis's pace was time. Russ and Lion L. Johnson both believed that, given enough time and concentration of force, Axis could sweep up every Raiden invader in one relentless campaign. The recent battles felt dreamlike. The Raiden went from high morale to despair, attempted to flee, and were often routed by a single crushing blow. Axis's victories lifted many theaters of war. The presence of such a god of slaughter broke enemy morale before a fight even began. On the Raiden side, the situation grew dire. Their grand galactic empire faced an enemy of unprecedented power, and their expansion stalled. Among the Imperium commanders, Chagatai Khan's thoughts were the most turbulent. He had never seen Axis in person. Hearing the reports left the steppesman silent. He and his legion stood in awe. Was that golden figure, trampling fleets and crushing foes, truly human? Even a gene seed Primarch could, given time, cut his way through an entire planet's defenders. He could fight for days and regenerate, but to achieve on a planetary scale within hours? Impossible. The White Scar's warriors isolated themselves, shaken to their marrow. They were space marines, but Axis's feats redefined their sense of what a warrior could be. Great Khan, how is this possible? Is this power human? Even the Emperor, surely only he could wield such might, one White Scar's officer blurted, half in blasphemy, unable to find another way to describe the feeling. They could only think of the word God when they spoke of Axis. Overwhelming, suffocating power. Chagatai Khan pressed Lion L. Johnson for answers. Lion had hinted at Axis's origins. Axis commanded Chi, a power unique to him, and he had not gone through ordinary Space Marine augmentation, but a mysterious transformation deep within the Imperial Palace in the Himalayas. Lion would not speak openly. Axis's identity was to remain secret for now, but the implication was clear. Axis was not an ordinary Space Marine. Even so, Chagatai Khan reminded his men of what mattered most. Axis had turned the tide of war and helped save humanity. Do not belittle yourselves, the Khan warned. You and he are fundamentally different, yet whatever his nature, he has fought for the Imperium. Feel how easily our battles have gone in recent days. This war is nearly won. We must combine our forces to deal with the last of the Raiden. Prepare to depart, and in this fight, perform so that Axis cannot look down on you. A few days later, Axis's fleet rendezvoused with Lion L. Johnson's indomitable Truth, bringing Leman Russ and Chagatai Khan together with their legions. The Raiden, meanwhile, began contracting their lines and retreating to their former borders. Reconnaissance, however, had discovered a Raiden bridgehead system, a fortified star system with more than a dozen heavily modified fortress worlds, a complete industrial chain, and a population made up of over 100 xeno-species. It was the springboard the Raiden had always used to strike Imperial worlds, an industrial heart and armory, their forward forge. Capturing it would neutralize their primary launching point. Aboard the indomitable Truth, Axis finally met Chagatai Khan face to face. The Khan stood over 3 meters tall in white power armor, a Mongolian braid at his back, only half a head shorter than Lion. A retinue of white-armored space marines accompanied him. The moment Axis stepped forward, all eyes turned. For 6 months his name had appeared on every report. You must be Axis, Chagatai Khan said, approaching and bowing in the style of his command. Lion L. Johnson has told us of you. I salute you, warrior of the Imperium. In this war, you are its true hero. Axis returned the salute with equal courtesy. And I salute you, Lord of the Fifth Legion, Gene Seed Primarch Chagatai Khan. After greetings, they moved into the conference hall. Lionel Johnson and Russ inclined their heads. Lion spoke first, as commander of the operation. Gentlemen, first we must celebrate our victory. In just 18 months, we have repelled the Raiden and saved hundreds of Imperial worlds. The greatest credit goes to Axis. Let us honor our hero. Led by the Primarchs, generals and soldiers snapped to attention and offered the Aquila salute. Axis accepted their cheers with a simple nod. Now the invaders are cleared from our lands, and we have located the enemy's bridgehead world, Lion continued. We must take it and turn it into Imperial territory. Let these foul Xenos learn the cost of attacking the Imperium. Let them know the nascent Imperium of man is not to be trifled with. The best defense is offense, Chagatai Khan added. If the Raiden strike again, we should intercept them before they reach our worlds. Russ broke in with his own fierce certainty. My Fenris warriors will join the fight. We will take their forward world and make it our fortress. Axis looked at them and proposed pushing even deeper into Raiden's space. Lion shook his head. Not now, Lion said. Other Primarchs are tied up to the south and west. Humanity is not fully united yet. I spoke with Father. The time for a decisive invasion of the Raiden homeland is not yet upon us. We will seize the bridgehead and fortify it as a frontline bastion. That is the purpose of this campaign. They agreed on the plan. Take the bridgehead, turn it into an Imperial stronghold, and deny the Raiden their staging ground. The war had been brutal, but with Axis among them, the Imperium's prospects looked far brighter and far stranger than anyone had imagined. Axis wanted more than anything to lead the warriors of the Imperium to crush those despised Raiden. Because of Axis's existence, he had already urged his father to drive deep into Raiden space and wipe them out. But war was not something one man could fight alone. Axis could not be everywhere at once. He could not appear on every battlefield. More importantly, he still had to return to Holy Terra to found his legion and officially become a Gene Seed Primarch, a process that would take at least 10 years. For now, the Imperium needed a buffer with the Raiden. A full-scale invasion was unrealistic. At most, the Imperium could mobilize 3 Astartes legions. The rest of its forces were already strained. The western and southern fronts burned hot. The Imperium had only existed a century, and the Great Crusade barely 70 or 80 years. There simply wasn't the accumulated wealth for an all-out war. This campaign had to be about holding the line, forcing back the Raiden, and creating a military deterrent, not annihilating them. Axis, we don't have that many troops, Russ said, eyes on Axis. 3 legions of Astartes, plus hundreds of millions of mortal auxiliaries. At best, we can take this bridgehead world. If we spread ourselves too thin, it will hurt us. Even a clash between 2 galactic behemoths wouldn't be settled overnight, however much Axis believed otherwise. I understand. So this will be the final battle of the campaign? Axis asked. His Vanguard fleet had been cruising for over a year. He had just made contact with Mater. They had exited the warp and were closing on the target system, preparing to observe the Necrons and see if parley was possible. Axis, you're right. It is the final battle. After it, we'll leave garrison forces on the Imperial border, Lionel Johnson said. Only when the Western and Southern wars are finished and the other Gene Seed Primarchs have returned will it be time for a decisive campaign against the Raiden. After we take their bridgehead, we'll need to fortify it, Chagatai Khan added. They began the usual discussion of allocations and deployments. But with Axis present, the 3 Primarchs kept glancing at him. With that small, terrible force at their side, the fine points felt less urgent. Axis, how do you think we should fight this? Lion asked. Tell us your plan. Axis cleared his throat. I do have a plan. Since this isn't the moment for total war with the Raiden, and the Imperium needs time to build strength, I propose we give them a strategic deterrent. A deterrent to break their will, Axis said, to force them to sue for peace, or at least make them afraid to strike our borders for decades. The 3 Primarchs exchanged looks. You mean you'll destroy their fleet? Russ asked. Axis had done that before. A single demonstration could terrify an enemy, but repeated strikes degraded the shock value. No, Axis replied. Not the fleet. They're fortress planets, everything they've poured effort into. If we destroy one of their worlds outright, the psychological impact will be enormous. If the Raiden have no defense against planet-level strikes, they won't dare probe our frontiers. Lion's eyes widened. You want to destroy a planet? It is far harder than blowing up ships, Chagatai agreed. How do you plan to do it? Destroy the core and destabilize the mantle? Exterminatus-style weapons? We don't have planet-killer energy beams in our fleets. Axis smiled. I don't mean collapsing a core to trigger geological self-destruction. I mean shattering the planet outright, reducing it to dust with absolute power. I plan to assemble a planet-destroying bomb, like the one Frieza used, and deliver it. It will take an astronomical amount of chi to gather and hold the charge, but I can do it. The Primarchs were skeptical, but Axis's confidence was unmistakable. If this works, they'll think twice before poking us. And if we can avoid turning the star system into a long-term garrison, so much the better. Turning it into a bridgehead world will take a decade. One decisive demonstration may buy us that time. They argued the pros and cons. Chagatai warned that destroying a habitable planet would remove any chance to use it as an outpost and limit them to small orbital fortifications. Axis countered that a true strategic shock would make occupation unnecessary. The enemy would be too frightened even to cross the line. After a long pause, the three Gene Seed Primarchs nodded. The psychological power of annihilating a world was worth the risk. Plans were finalized. The Primarchs returned to their flagships. 4 Gloriana-class battleships and thousands of escort vessels slipped into the warp, and a month later arrived at the border system. The Raiden were already there, arrayed in strict formation. At the center sat a forge world, ringed by several modified fortified planets. Countless Raiden warships were anchored, an estimated 2,000 vessels, and looming among them was a moon-sized 2,000-kilometer behemoth, a giant interstellar fortress the size of a small moon. It was the third battle moon Axis had seen in this war. In raw numbers, the Raiden held the advantage, but Axis alone more than evened the odds. In the original timeline, humanity had lost thousands of worlds and been driven to the brink. When the fleets were still an astronomical unit apart, a communication request came from the Raiden flagship. Lionel Johnson, Supreme Commander of the battle, accepted. The broadcast formed a virtual image of an insectile creature with 3 pairs of compound eyes and 6 arms. Humans, it said. I am Tartar, Supreme Commander of the Eastern New District of the Galactic Empire. I represent the Empire in negotiations. I propose a non-aggression pact. This war can be a mistake. The Raiden, shaken by Axis's presence, had chosen to open talks. The possibility of a protracted fight with a being capable of planet-level strikes deterred them. Negotiate now? Lion's voice was cold. When you invaded the Imperium, did you ever consider negotiation? Tartar's virtual mien shifted. There were misunderstandings. In the first war, we attempted communication. There were complications, losses on both sides. We propose we redraw borders and avoid further conflict. The Galactic Empire promises not to strike the Imperium again. Do you choose peace or war? War, Lion roared. At that instant, Axis was teleported, Kasha's psychic power flaring, to the orbit of a habitable world behind the Raiden lines. He raised a hand and began to focus all his chi. A small, glowing crimson sphere bloomed in his palm and ballooned as Axis poured more energy into it. It grew from hundreds of meters to kilometers, then tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands of meters. The light intensified, the surface rippling with heat and light until the sphere exceeded 1,000 kilometers in diameter, a truly colossal ball of concentrated burning energy. Watch closely, Raiden. Axis sneered. This is humanity's power. He hurled the planet-busting sphere down. For an instant, the world seemed to drain of color. Sound itself fell away. The colossal crimson globe slammed into the planet's surface. Chapter 130, Planet Destroyer, God, Star God, Jinchuriki Project. The moment the crimson sphere of destruction touched the planet's surface, the entire atmosphere shuddered like ripples on water. A blue membrane flared, the Raiden planetary energy shield. The Imperium of Man had similar planetary shields, but the Raiden command had always thought theirs superior. For an instant, the shield held back Axis's planet-killing projectile. Then Axis pushed his palm forward, and a surge of even greater, Golden energy erupted from him. The Super Saiyan power was unleashed. The planet's surface shield began to fracture. The force field generators overloaded and collapsed, and the shield disintegrated in less than 3 seconds under Axis's strike. The Rhydon on the planet widened their 3 pairs of compound eyes in disbelief. They fumbled to restart the shield, but the machinery had burned out. They were powerless to do anything but watch the destruction falling from the sky. The sky turned blood red as the colossal energy sphere descended. When it struck, the atmosphere was ripped apart as if a giant hand had torn it. Clouds vaporized. The cracked ground beneath was exposed. Crimson light erupted from the impact, racing across the globe. Mountains crumbled. Oceans boiled. The crust fractured like thin glass. Tectonic plates were lifted by an invisible force. Massive fissures rended continents, and searing magma spewed into pillars of fire thousands of kilometers high. Cities, fortresses, and foundries were consumed by lava in seconds. Hundreds of millions of Rhydon were extinguished before they could scream, their bodies turned to ash. The energy ball plunged through the mantle to the core. The core's motion was violently churned, and the planet's gravitational field began to collapse. The planet swelled like an overstretched balloon. The surface bulged, and then, boom. In the silent reaches of space, the explosion's light shattered every gaze. The planet detonated in the star system, fragmenting into billions of burning shards. A shockwave swept outward, tearing through the battlefield. Rhydon craft too close were obliterated instantly. Nearby warships were vaporized, defense satellites shredded. Warships twisted and disintegrated in the turbulence like toys crushed by an unseen hand. The destructive force was unimaginable. There were no long cries. Nearly half the Rhydon fleet was annihilated by the planetary shockwave, swallowed by fire and heat, incapable of sending a single distress signal. Those that survived looked feeble and awkward. Axis had already pulled himself back via psychic teleportation. When the teleporter valve hissed open, Kasha stepped out, her robe soaked with sweat. She stared at the golden figure emerging from the energy turbulence, lips trembling as she tried to speak. The shockwave from Axis's strike had even interfered with her psychic link. She'd had to expend 10 times the usual power to bring him home. Outside the skylight, the detonation painted space with a brilliant, terrible bloom. "How was it, girl? Pretty fireworks, wasn't it?" Axis said lightly. "Pretty my ass. I almost couldn't teleport you back." Kasha snapped. "Ha ha! If you hadn't, I'd have flown back myself." Axis laughed. "Don't underestimate my shield. I wouldn't destroy a planet and then be taken out by the aftershocks." Silence fell over the human observers. Russ's wolfish eyes reflected the dying light of the blast. His throat bobbed as he whispered, "By the Emperor." Shagoris Khan's tactical goggles scrolled numbers. The explosion's energy release, his readouts showed, was equivalent to 3 days of a star's total output. He murmured, "This isn't war. This is divine retribution. This is the true wrath of the Lord of mankind." "Axis," Lionel Johnson's voice told through the comms, deep as a cathedral bell, "you have not merely destroyed a planet, you have rewritten the Rhydon's entire conception of war." Lion's body trembled a little. He had never imagined a warrior could reach such a level, planetary destruction treated like crushing dust. If Axis could do that to a terrestrial world, what might happen if he amplified the sphere tenfold and hurled it into a gas giant? Gas giants, bound by colossal gravity and composed of volatile gases, would erupt with power orders of magnitude greater than a rocky planet. Their detonation could sweep through an entire star system and even affect the parent star. To think of destroying a star itself made Lion stop. Even the smallest red dwarf dwarfed any planet 100-fold. The implications chilled him. For a moment he wanted to ask Axis, could you detonate a gas giant or even a star? But he did not. Some questions, he feared, had answers he did not want to hear. Tartara's 6 segmented limbs twitched. The holographic star map showed over 47% of his fleet had lost contact in the shockwave, including the Ark mothership carrying the royal bloodline. "Send an encrypted message to the homeworld now," he ordered, viscous stress oozing from fissures in his carapace. Code level, Doomsday. 1 line only. "Humanity possesses a walking star god fragment." The communications officer's forelimbs froze as he transmitted the message. In his deadened understanding, no biological life form should wield such power. The only beings known to possess such reality-shaping, inexhaustible energy were the cosmic star gods, beings beyond normal comprehension. The Galactic Empire had first learned of them from the Space Tomb clan. In fighting and eradicating remnants, they had discovered fragments and artifacts. In the core of one small Necron dynasty's tomb, they had found a star god fragment, a kilometer wide, brimming with boundless energy. Their tomb's defense system had self-destructed and denied them control, but from the residue they had gleaned a terrifying truth. Star gods controlled cosmic rules. Each represented a law of the universe and wielded world-shattering power. Long before they attained consciousness, whole star gods devoured surrounding stars. Even fragments possessed enough power to destroy planets. In their prime, they could traverse entire galaxies for reasons unknown. Tartara and the Raiden commanders suspected what they had witnessed. This golden human must be a star god weapon, something the Lord of Mankind had bound into a living vessel. The Galactic Empire had once theorized the same thing. Bind a star god fragment and seal it within an ordinary body, creating a controllable weapon. Their scientists concluded that sealing a star god's fragment into an ordinary life form dramatically shortened its lifespan. At best 1 year, not even long enough to complete a single warp voyage. The plan had been shelved. Now Tartara realized that humanity had done what they had only dared dream of. Humanity had scouted the Imperium and known of gene seed Primarchs, bodies of resilience and power. Tartara believed that the Lord of Mankind must have used a gene seed Primarch's body to seal the star god fragment, which explained the horrendous power they'd just seen. They had once encountered a Primarch and nearly captured him. Though they failed, they had salvaged some flesh and blood for cloning experiments. Now, they had to catch up. If humans could make one humanoid star god weapon, the Raiden must create 10. Tartara's compound eyes twisted in terror as mucus oozed from his carapace. "Retreat! Full fleet retreat!" he cried. Fear replaced the earlier bravado across the fleet. The commanders no longer spoke of conquest. One by one, the battlecruisers acknowledged orders and turned to flee. Capoga class received, preparing to return. Uelto class received, preparing to return. Cabora class received, preparing to return. No vessel paused to parley. All they wanted now was distance from the Golden Demon. But Axis reappeared in their formation before they could get away. "You can't all run," he seemed to say. "I'll let a few of you escape to carry a warning. I don't intend to let you go unscathed." "More than half losses aren't enough. You need over 70%. The golden aura burned. Axis raised his hand and condensed another orb of light on his fingertips. "Run," he said coldly and calmly, "and tell your kind, humanity is inviolable." The new sphere shot through the fleet, a second wave of annihilation. The Raiden did not retaliate. They fled. When the carnage ended, over 60% of their fleet lay destroyed. Only a few hundred ships, plus the Celestial-class planetary fortress that Axis allowed to escape, slipped into warp. Axis had spared the fortress on purpose. If only a scattering of rank-and-file soldiers returned, their report might be dismissed. A commander had to survive to carry the threat in his words. When warp took them home, Tartara collapsed, gasping. They had just escaped extinction. He swore, through trembling bioelectrical impulses, that he would petition the Galactic Empire to pursue the Star God weapon project at any cost. They would bind Star God fragments to make humanoid weapons to counter this golden destroyer. If humanity could do it first, the Raiden could do it better. "Wait," he vowed, "you damned humans. When we come back, we will annihilate you. If you can make one, we will make 10. Chapter 131, Necrons, the Flayers. A very strange misunderstanding had taken root. From the Raiden commander's point of view, the golden bright figure before him had done things no living being should be able to do, body-slamming enemy battleships, annihilating whole fleets by himself, even detonating an entire planet. That radiance wasn't psychic. It had no tie to the warp. There was nothing in the physical universe that matched it except the star gods. When word of this reached Raiden High Command, they leapt to the conclusion that the Imperium of Man had found some way to harness the power of the star gods. If they could not update their own technology to catch up with humanity, the gap in combat power would become enormous. Axis had no idea that, by his actions, he had become a strategic deterrent against the Raiden. He had only caused panic and driven the Raiden to develop a weapon that would not have existed in the original timeline. The Great Crusade fleet's victory was stunning. The bridgehead world the Raiden had established was utterly destroyed, and the ease of the triumph sent the entire fleet into jubilation. None of them had expected the engagement to be so swift or decisive. The Imperium's might felt miraculous. Naval officers and space marines alike celebrated, declaring it the Emperor's miracle. But while the fleet rejoiced, 3 Primarchs with gene seed responsibilities faced the aftermath: how to deal with the ruined star system. The planet that had stood in the habitable zone was gone. Axis's strike had left it uninhabitable. It would be impractical to garrison a large force there with supply lines cut off. "We'll establish at most 2 outposts here, with only a small garrison," Chagatai Khan decided. "If the Raiden resurge, we notify the Imperium immediately so reinforcement can be organized." "Agreed," Lionel Johnson said. "Several worlds nearby were already terraformed by the Raiden. We can adjust those and station 10,000 regular troops, assign a psyker for communications." Leman Russ nodded in agreement. The 3 Primarchs hashed out details: outpost locations, troop numbers and deployment, and how to provide early warning to the Imperium. Then, Lionel Johnson turned to Axis. "Next, I will escort Axis to Holy Terra. You will return to the source and complete what remains of your mission," the Lion said. Axis's abilities had to be consolidated. It was time for him to go to Holy Terra, perfect his gene seed, and form his Astartes Legion. Axis's manipulation of chi energy had already improved the gene seed. Lion's specially cultivated stock for his son Lucifer was more stable after Axis's treatments. Russ, listening, felt a surge of emotion. He had not expected that in only a few decades the little wolf cub would grow so powerful. While the Primarchs were in conference, Axis remained aboard the Glory Queen and established a psychic link with Mater to learn more about the battle between the space Necrons and the Raiden. "Lord Axis," Mater reported, "we arrived in the target system over a month ago and have been observing. Several Raiden species and many vassal forces are engaged with those green metal skeletons. Their weapons are incredibly advanced, and ordinary troopers' armament is far superior to our bolters. The space Necrons' technology is far ahead of ours. Have you tried to make contact?" Axis asked. Mater's reply was hesitant. "Their weapons are advanced, but they are not a normal civilization. These metal skeletons are very strange. I think they are more like the dead or demons from legend. It would be unwise to engage them." "Describe what you observed," Axis pressed. "They are disorderly and undisciplined," Mater said. "Despite their superior arms, they fight without command or structure. There were scenes I cannot forget. After slaughtering enemies, these metal skeletons would take the enemy flesh and skin and drape it over themselves. It was grotesque." At the first mention of that practice, Axis went rigid. Flesh and skin draped over themselves? The Flayers, he knew the name. The Flayer virus, a corruption said to be the curse of a star god named Grandu, twisted Necron programming. Infected units developed an insatiable craving for flesh. Their core directives became corrupted. The compulsion only abated when their bodies were smeared with blood and skin. Over time, any class of Necron could lose self-control and become a ravenous monster. "They even fight among themselves to rip off flesh," Mater continued. "It causes severe internal conflicts. No officers, no coherent command, just blind, frenzied attacks. Retreat immediately," Axis ordered. "Break contact and return at once." The Flayers were beyond reason. They attacked their own kin. They were mad. Worse, the infection was contagious, though, by luck, it did not affect humans. Adele, who listened in, agreed. These beings could not be reasoned with. Even if their weapons were terrifying, their butcher's habits slowed them enough that the Raiden could exploit tactical weaknesses. Overall, the tide favored the Raiden. "Be careful leaving the system," Axis warned. "Do not let either side detect you." Axis felt unlucky. He had hoped to contact a space Necrons dynasty and maybe get help decoding King Vegeta's password box. Instead, they had found Flayers. It made sense that this dynasty had been overrun by the Raiden. Mater sent the order to the captain of their Dreadnought-class destroyer to prepare for warp. The mission was done. There was no point sticking around. The battleship powered up the warp drive and slipped into its shimmering transit. Then, without warning, a sickly green light flared within the ship's hull. A glowing, grid-patterned cuboid appeared, and in an instant, a 2.5-meter-tall green metal skeleton materialized in the middle of the chamber. This was no mere trooper. He wore ornate fittings and carried a staff. "Identify yourself." Matter and the Space Wolves' adjutant snapped, weapons raised. "Do not misunderstand," the metal figure said, his tone urgent. "I only wish to borrow your ship to escape. My dynasty has been infected with a malignant virus. We are not as you see us." "State your name and purpose," the adjutant barked. "My name is Grandu. I am a chronomancer of a space Necrons dynasty. I served the Ferox himself, but by misfortune, the Ferox is dead, and my kin have become monsters. I beg to use your vessel to leave this system." Matter and Odoro exchanged a look. They would not let a stranger, especially a Necron, move freely within their ship. "Lower your weapon and surrender," Mater ordered. Chapter 132, Space Marine Librarian versus Necromancer, Chronomancer. Several Space Wolves rushed in, weapons drawn, and leveled at the metal skeleton before them. If it made any sudden moves, they would not hesitate to open fire and cut it down. "Boarding your ship uninvited may be rude, but I had no choice," said Chronomancer Grandu, the Time Necron. "Lowering my weapons is impossible. A Time Necron never abandons his staff of eternity." A Space Wolves company captain snorted. "Then we'll just take you by force." Two Space Wolves surged forward, chainswords hungrily whirring. A dozen more opened up with bolters. The Time Necron swept his cloak, and a shimmering temporal shield sprang up, easily deflecting the barrage. He lifted his staff, and the blue crystal at its tip shed a pale azure light. A bubble of frozen, shimmering energy snapped into being and trapped the two charging Marines, suspending them motionless. In moments, Grandu had immobilized more than a dozen attackers, but he did not slay them. "I bear you no ill will," he said. "I only wish to use your vessel to leave. Grant me that, and we will not clash. You cannot defeat me. I could wipe out everyone on this ship." Grandu's voice was cool, but his words masked desperation. As a Time Necron, he could project stasis fields charged with temporal energy. His staff could trap foes in temporal bubbles, and his cloak could weave timelines to create formidable offense and defense. He normally would have scoffed at interacting with lesser species, but his people were afflicted. His kin had been turning into ravenous, flesh-craving monsters, a contagion spreading through the Necron race. Those who had awakened normally now risked succumbing. Grandu had isolated himself with temporal technology as a last refuge, but the infection was advancing. He had found an alien ship listed in the Necron world's central records, phase teleported aboard, and hoped to steal passage out of the system before the curse reached him. "Humph, a mere stasis field," Matter said coldly. He raised his staff and poured his psychic power through it. The spell struck the temporal bubble and dissolved it, freeing the two Marines. Grandu's eyes flashed with surprise. "You, a powerful psyker. I underestimated you." "We'll talk if you surrender," Matter said. "If not, then we fight until you're disarmed." Grandu produced an hourglass, an artifact crafted by a cryptographer capable of manipulating time within a radius. He flipped it. Temporal rifts split open across the Dauntless-class cruiser's hold. Bolter rounds hung suspended in midair, their trajectories stretched into stutters. Charging Space Wolves froze mid-stride, each frame of motion locked in a lattice of time. Everything inside the hold slowed to an unnatural stillness. The ship itself seemed wrapped in a temporal field. Some warriors were slowed to droplets of motion, others were accelerated into disjointed, spasmodic movements. Matter found his own attacks looping back, reset before they could land. "If you underestimate a Time Necron's tricks, that will be your mistake," Grandu intoned. His true form flickered as if between moments. He occupied a temporal interstice, not quite in the same dimension as the others. Mater planted his feet and raised a psychic ward high, the arcane energies from his staff flaring. He had trained on Prospero. He was no ordinary psyker, but a librarian schooled in the deepest disciplines of the discipline. "Your tricks won't trap me." His armor glowed with a pale blue light that began to neutralize the temporal weave. Grandu's voice carried a hint of annoyance. "My hourglass shows me countless possible timelines. You cannot defeat me, psyker. We need not fight. I only need your ship." Matter did not yield. He erupted with psychic force, more intense than before. The power was like a massive hand, reaching into the temporal lattice and seizing Grandu's true form. The temporal barrier that had frozen the hold collapsed like glass under pressure. Grandu's faceplate flickered. He had not expected a human psyker capable of unraveling his field so quickly. Matter pushed forward. The tip of his staff flared with blinding blue lightning as he drew deeper from the warp and unleashed the strongest sorcery he had learned on Prospero. A crackling bolt of psychic lightning tore through Grandu's defenses. The cryptographer's hourglass rattled as sand flowed backward, crystal fracture lines spidering across its surface before it shattered. No, impossible. Grandu's mechanical voice broke with panic. He had never seen psychic power that could directly interfere with the flow of time. Matter seized the moment. A storm of psychic energy battered the Time Necron and hurled him bodily across the deck. He crashed and slid, then crumpled as the space wolves recovered their coherence. Marines sprang forward, pinning Grandu to the deck and ripping the hourglass, cloak, and staff of eternity from his grasp. He thrashed, but Matter pressed a palm to his forehead and poured a barrier over his mind, stifling his thoughts. Under the librarian's psychic lock, Grandu's consciousness sank into a suspended comatose state. Mater breathed, finally with relief. That had been close. Without his intervention, everyone aboard might have been trapped, or worse. Mater, is he secured? Odoro asked as he approached. They had watched the exchange helplessly until Matter had taken command. Fortunately, the librarian had been more than a match. I've suppressed his thought patterns and placed him into induced stasis, Mater replied. Contain him in a stasis field immediately. I must report to Lord Axis. Odoro nodded and ordered several space wolves to escort the captured Time Necron to a secure cell. Watch him closely, Mater added. After I report to Axis, I will personally guard him. I don't trust anyone else with this. With the threat contained, the Dauntless-class cruiser rolled into the Immaterium and began its warp transit. Matter contacted Axis through the ship's secure channel. Lord Axis, he said, voice steady, we have captured a Time Necron. When Axis first received the message, he could hardly believe it. What did you say? You captured a Necron Time Cryptek. This was no common prisoner. It was a high-ranking Necron, one of those who served directly under overlords and pharaohs, an engineer and temporal scientist in Cryptek form. Chronometrons, chronoscopes, chronostaves, these were apex temporal devices. The Necron scientific apparatus had reached the pinnacle of material technology and was probing time, space, and unknown higher domains. If it weren't for me, Mater said, no one in the fleet could have taken him. My psychic power is strong enough. While I was on Prospero, I learned anti-temporal psychic techniques specifically for dealing with time users. That's how I beat him, though it was extremely dangerous. If the prisoner was an intellect library in itself, a repository of prodigious intelligence, then defeating a Necron time cryptek was plausible. Ordinary space marines would be helpless, but an intellect library changed the equation. Has he been infected with that flare virus? What is his mental state? Axis asked. Lord Axis, I can't say for sure if it's the same flare infection. Necrons don't have flesh, so any pathogen would be electronic in nature, and I'm not well versed in that, but his mind is intact. He has full self-awareness and cognition, Mater replied. Good. Detain him. Keep him under constant watch, 24 hours. Strip him of every piece of equipment and bring him to me. Axis thought fast. This Necron was essentially a cryptek. He might be capable of opening King Vegeta's safe. With a blend of his psychic power and cultivated chi, Axis believed he could get the Necron to cooperate. Axis had changed, had become something between flesh and machine. He described himself as half a spark plug, able to convert certain special life forms into super-machine spirits. That transformation amplified computational capacity and gave a true soul to an otherwise mechanical intelligence, allowing full control, manipulation, adaptation, even perfect obedience. But it required a subject with a high level of intelligence and self-cognition. Ordinary machine spirits and basic AIs wouldn't do. Only those who retained self-awareness could be remade into super-machine spirits. Noble Necrons fit that bill. Low-level Necrons had their emotions and individuality erased, but the noble class retained full cognition. No Necron could refuse the promise of regaining a soul, even a soul born in cold metal. A minority of cryptechs preferred their metal form as the pinnacle of evolution, but Axis's process could override resistance and turn even that conviction against its owner, binding them to his will. I understand, Lord Axis. I'll guard him day and night. No breaks, Mater promised. Be careful on the route. I'll be returning to Holy Terra soon. Set course for that destination, Axis said. Matter cut the psychic link. They spent more than a year in transit to the Necron system, anomalous by all standards. A journey that should have taken a month or two stretched to 10 times that. Warp travel was fickle. Delays of months, decades, even centuries were not unheard of. Axis lamented the unreliability. If only another Saiyan ship existed, the Morning Star could have absorbed the vessel and scaled its hyperspace engine to its own systems. Though only a few hundred times light speed, such a drive would have been safer for short hops. He also hoped King Vegeta's safe might contain some useful spatial gear. A note, King Vegeta's spatial device wasn't a simple escape pod, but another kind of spatial technology. Axis had long given up on the Imperium replicating a true hyperspace engine anytime soon. Humanity's technology in the 30th millennium baffled him. Even basic tasks, loading shells and torpedoes, were not fully automated and still relied on human labor. A Dauntless-class cruiser needed tens of thousands of crew simply because the Imperium had no way around that. From Axis's perspective, the Imperium had regressed from advanced 21st century tech to something like the Age of Sail. He'd offered the hyperspace blueprint over 50 years ago. Half a century passed, and the Emperor's people had barely moved beyond energy weapons in tiny numbers, and production was pitiful. Axis wondered how humanity endured into the 42nd millennium given such stagnation. When he rejoined his ship, Kasha was waiting. "What's wrong?" she asked, seeing his expression. "We didn't make diplomatic headway with that Necron dynasty," Axis replied, "but we captured something important. Whatever it is, be ready. When we reach Holy Terra, your final test begins," Kasha said. She was anxious. Her restoration as an Imperial princess and Axis's chance at Primarch status hung on this return. "Don't worry," Axis said with a grin. "It's already set." Half a month later, the Raiden War ended. Axis boarded his Gloriana-class battleship and, with Lionel Johnson, slipped into the warp toward Holy Terra. For the transit, he dug deep into his training, cultivating chi and honing psychic technique. The Gloriana's navigation proved dependable. Their voyage, thousands of light years, took only a month and a half. They emerged at the solar system's outskirts and arrived at Pluto. Nearly 30 years had passed since Axis last left Holy Terra. Decades flashed by. It was more than 50 years since the modifications performed on him there. His transition from an ordinary Super Saiyan to a legendary Super Saiyan. When he'd left, he couldn't reliably control the Super Saiyan form. Now he had command of Super Saiyan 1 and was brushing the threshold of Super Saiyan 2. The legendary Super Saiyan metamorphosis had been completed. "Are you nervous?" Kasha asked. "Not at all," Axis said. "I'm confident this visit will go smoothly." Still, he wanted an opening to break through to Super Saiyan 2. A real fight would do it. Huang Laohan was one candidate. He'd even considered challenging the Emperor outright. After all, he was a Saiyan at heart. Saiyans wanted worthy opponents. Fighting weaklings all the time was dull. Kasha's response was honest. "I'm very nervous." 2 days later, they docked at the moon's spaceport. From there, Axis, Kasha, and Lionel Johnson rode a shuttle to Holy Terra. The Emperor had only recently returned from the Western Galactic Front and awaited them in the Imperial Palace. The stakes were high. Could a new Astartes Legion be raised? Could a new Gene Seed Primarch be recognized? Would Kasha's status be restored? On the palace approach, Axis ran into an old acquaintance, Kai Gay, now a custodian guard captain with a dozen custodes at his back. "Lord Axis, long time. Do you remember me?" Kai Gay asked. Axis's memory came back instantly. After the last war, they'd escorted the second Primarch back to Holy Terra, and the Emperor had assigned them to the palace. For 2 or 3 months, Axis had trained Kaige and others as their custodian guard captain. Those months had been brutal. Axis put them through relentless drills that left them exhausted, then purified and strengthened their bodies with chi. The suffering was immense, but the gains were real. Kaige's abilities leapt. Valdor himself had noticed and recommended Kaige for command. Now he'd been promoted. "Ha ha ha!" Of course I remember, Axis said, clapping Kaiji on the shoulder. We should spar sometime. Custodes were no joke. Their physiques and combat abilities were second only to the Primarchs. Kaiji and his peers had been crucial to Axis's early development, his golden sparring partners. You flatter me, Kaiji said with a wry smile. We haven't seen each other in almost 30 years. You must be terrifying now. I doubt I'm worthy. Maybe you should go find a Gene Seed Primarch to spar with. Don't torment us Custodes anymore, he added with mock exasperation. Lionel Johnson, standing nearby, cleared his throat. He had been on Axis's ship for more than a month earlier, accepting Axis's key training. The experience had been transformative. A roughly 20% increase in physical capability and a sharper combat edge. But the sessions had also been brutal. Axis had beaten him mercilessly, leaving the Lion to question himself for a while. Still, the improvement was real. After that month, he felt he could best Horus more easily. They reached the Imperial Palace. The Emperor stood resplendent in his true armor, a golden aura suffusing the hall. Axis, the Emperor said, you've driven back the Raiden who invaded Imperial space. What reward do you desire? Kasha's reward was already decided, restoration as Imperial Princess. The Emperor turned to Axis, offering him choice within reason. Anything within reason, the Emperor repeated. Axis looked the Golden Throne's occupant squarely in the eye. Then, great Lord of Mankind, he said, steady and loud enough for the court to hear, Emperor, come and fight me, with all your might. Silence fell across the Imperial Palace. The entire Imperial Palace fell into a deathly silence. Every pair of eyes in the hall locked onto Axis in stunned disbelief. Even Kasha and Lionel Johnson looked as if they'd misheard. The surrounding Custodes were the first to react. They drew their power weapons and stepped forward, glaring at Axis with murderous intent. That included Caesar, who had brought Axis here. Caesar's private relationship with the youth was amiable, but if the Emperor's safety was threatened, he would not hesitate. Anyone who dared humiliate the human Emperor was an enemy of the Custodes. No exceptions. They were born for this moment. Axis, you idiot, what are you talking about? Someone barked. No one had dreamed that the first thing Axis would do upon arriving on Holy Terra was to challenge the human Emperor. Having spent more than a month with him, they knew Axis meant no political harm. The boy simply craved fights against strong opponents. But to set his sights on his father and to ask to fight him was beyond outrageous. Within moments, the Custodes had closed in on Axis, ready to spring the instant the Emperor gave the order. Kasha, standing at his side, was so terrified she couldn't speak. She had thought his earlier boast was bravado to relieve tension. She had not expected him to be serious. Axis, what have you done? Her heart screamed. Human Emperor, didn't you say there were no unreasonable conditions? Anything is fine? Axis addressed the throne calmly. I want to fight a strong opponent. Will you grant me this one request? I want to fight you, an all-out fight. Whether I can break through to the second stage of Super Saiyan depends on you, Your Majesty. The Emperor's laughter filled the hall, deep, unexpected, amused. He signaled the Custodes to stand down. Ha ha ha! Truly interesting, Axis, he said. You want to fight me? He hadn't laughed like that in a long time. In the material universe, he was unrivaled. Nothing could truly best him. Only in the warp had he felt threatened by the chaos entities. If he ever shed his physical shell and released his full hidden power, the Dark King, perhaps not even the Chaos Gods would stand against him. The situation before him was absurd and deliciously entertaining. Axis answered simply, I want to fight because I want to get stronger. I don't want territory, titles, or rulership. Give me the strongest fight you can, and I'll see what I can become. The Emperor considered him a moment longer. Your campaign against the Raiden brought great honor to the Imperium, he said finally. Ask me for a reward, rule a star sector, whatever you wish that does not harm humanity, and I will grant it. I don't want that, Axis said. Ruling means nothing to me. I only want to fight you. Saiyans cared for two things, getting stronger and fighting. Everything Axis had done led back to those twin obsessions, advancing towards Super Saiyan God, mastering divine power to stand against the Chaos Four, testing himself against ever greater foes. He had no interest in ruling or saving the universe as a moral crusade. He wanted strength and the clash of battle for its own sake. He flared. Golden light erupted from his body, His hair rose and turned brilliant gold. Pure fighting spirit radiated from him. Simple, animal, irresistible. Fight, fight, come on! The raw, exhilarating will to battle blasted across the hall. Everyone felt it. Hearts pounded, blood raced. Lionel Johnson's eyes flashed an unnatural crimson. The fighting spirit that Axis radiated stirred something feral within him. This civilized lord, beneath the veneer, a true beast longing for combat. Rage and desire mixed in him. He could not best Axis yet. He had to become stronger. Axis had declared the Emperor his quarry, but Lion silently vowed Axis would be his own target of challenge and conquest one day. Even the custodes trembled, not with fear, but with a sudden, fierce excitement. This was not sedition. Axis was not dishonoring the Emperor. He simply burned for a duel with a true equal. The Emperor, seated on his throne, felt it too. The aura made any man feel young and violent. The Emperor stood. His movement made the hall seem to quake as a wave of psychic power radiated from him. Golden armor shone under the eternal flame. The shadow of his tall figure swept across half the chamber. The desire to fight, long dormant in him, answered Axis's call. He had been invincible for so long he could barely remember the last time his blood had boiled. Was it when he first stepped into the cosmos? When he felled the time dragon? When he struck down a great daemon? Time had blurred, but the hunger for a worthy opponent remained. Very well, Axis. His voice rolled like thunder through the hall, threaded with a warrior's hunger. It has been a long time since I encountered so pure a fighter. Perhaps this is the most primal urge in the human soul. Men are warriors by nature. Boys love sticks and never outgrow the urge to strike. Battle is woven into our history. For women, for land, for survival, for food. Civilization may have taught us manners, but the wildness endures. Who among us does not yearn for the moment his fist finds another's face? I too wish to fight you. Axis smiled, the golden aura flaring until the stone beneath his feet began to crack. That's what I wanted to hear. Let us fight with everything we have. A protest rose. Human Emperor, this is too dangerous. Captain General Valdor stepped forward, but the Emperor raised a hand to silence him. Stand down, Valdor, the Emperor commanded. His voice left no room for argument. This is a duel worthy of respect, a contest between warriors. Lionel Johnson, standing to one side, nodded. His own fighting spirit had been ignited. Valdor's protest turned to fury. Axis, you lunatic, he roared. He never imagined Axis would be so reckless, or that the Emperor would indulge it. If these two unleashed themselves, Holy Terra itself might not withstand the shock. Captain General Valdor tried to argue further, but the Lord of Mankind's gaze had already told him everything. This battle was inevitable. But Lord of Mankind, this fight would be more than Holy Terra can bear. If you and Axis go all out, the entire planet will be destroyed, Valdor said. He was not exaggerating. The Lord of Mankind himself possessed the strength to crush stars with his hands, and the battle footage from the front showed Axis could demolish planets as easily. If the two of them truly unleashed their full power, no planet could stand it. The scale of destruction would be beyond humanity's endurance. Then we'll find another place to fight, the Lord of Mankind said. Respected Lord, if you want a star system where two beings of your power can fight without restraint, it must be a dead, uninhabited system. Even by starship, it would take months to get there, Valdor replied. They could not simply pick a place on a whim. It's fine. We can control ourselves and find an uninhabited moon in the solar system. Saturn and Jupiter have many, Axis said. The clash had become inevitable. He did not want to wait any longer. No need. I know a place perfectly suited for Axis and me to fight, where neither of us need hold back, the Lord of Mankind said. Valdor's eyes widened. He looked at the Lord in disbelief. You don't mean? As Captain General of the Adeptus Custodes, Valdor knew the deepest secret beneath Holy Terra's palace. The Lord of Mankind had been using an ancient technological construct, the Golden Throne, to carve a webway, bridging humanity to the ancient Eldar webway. The Golden Throne had been unearthed in the Sahara on Holy Terra. At first, everyone thought it was a relic of the Dark Age of technology, but later they learned humans of that era had only tinkered with it. The core was far older. It dated back some 60 million years to the super-ancient civilization known as the Old Ones, a device the Old Ones used to carve the webway. After obtaining it, The Lord of Mankind had added his own devices and refinements. The Golden Throne could amplify psychic power and control the webway. It was humanity's gateway to the wider universe. Valdor realized the only place he could think of that would be safe enough for such a duel was the webway. This, however, was the palace's deepest secret, known only to the Adeptus Custodes, the Lord himself, a handful of top human scientists, and Chancellor Micardo. How did Axis even know about it? The Lord did not need to train a successor. He was effectively immortal, but that did not explain revealing such a secret. "Are you questioning my decision, Valdor?" The Lord of Mankind asked. His tone carried the weight of command without anger. Valdor bowed his head and knelt. The Lord's word overruled all. There was nothing to argue. "Axis, Lionel Johnson, my daughter Kasha, I will take you to a place. You must promise that everything you see today will not be revealed. Even the outcome of the duel between Axis and me must remain secret. You are here merely to see me. There will be no battle between Axis and me to be told of." "Do you understand?" the Lord of Mankind said. Axis nodded. Kasha, standing nearby, shone with excitement. Her father had finally acknowledged her publicly. He had even called her his daughter in front of a Primarch. Her identity was being restored. "Yes, father," she answered. Lionel Johnson's face went pale. The Lord of Mankind had a daughter. Did that make Kasha their sister? Older, perhaps. If she was not a Geneseed Primarch, she must be the Lord's true child. The implications unsettled him. The Lord of Mankind led them deeper into the palace until they stood before the Golden Throne. It was a colossal golden construct, bristling with ancient components and arcane devices, radiating a mysterious primeval aura. "Do you see it? This is the Golden Throne," the Lord explained, patting Kasha's shoulder. "There are modifications from the Dark Age of technology, but its core is far older. I even found Eldar runes on it, which means the Eldar once preserved it before we did." Trivia: the Adeptus Custodes know the true origin of the Golden Throne. Otherwise, in the stories about the Corpse Emperor's throne, they would not have sent rogue traders to Kamara to find the Dark Eldar homunculi to repair it. For a moment, the Lord of Mankind seemed like an infinitely gentle father. No one could say what his true nature was. He became whatever the situation demanded, an unyielding warrior before Axis, a kind parent before Kasha. Before the Primarchs, he wore yet another face. "This device can control and carve the webway and amplify psychic power," he went on. "But only those whose psychic might reaches a certain level can sit upon it safely, otherwise they will die. Operating the throne is agonizing. In the whole Imperium, only 2 people can safely use it." He meant himself and Magnus. The Lord believed Lionel Johnson would never betray him. He trusted the Lion's silence. As for Axis and Kasha, one would soon be family by marriage, the other was his daughter. He trusted them too. Besides, the Custodes and a few scientists already knew of the throne. There was no reason to hide it from them. "Father, the 2 you mean are you and Magnus, right?" Kasha asked. Before meeting Magnus, she had thought she and Micardo were the most powerful psychers in the Imperium. Meeting Magnus had shown her otherwise. "It concerns plans I cannot explain yet. Suffice to say, I used the throne to carve an ancient passage between the warp and real space, a completely independent realm where Axis and I can fight," the Lord said. Axis felt conflicted. Of course it was the webway the Lord had carved. Fighting there was dangerous. The passages the Golden Throne had opened were fragile. A single psychic blast from someone like Magnus could tear it apart. If the 2 of them fought without restraint, it would be a miracle if the webway did not collapse. If they went all out, wouldn't the Lord have to sit on the Golden Throne himself beforehand? Then what would become of him? "Is it safe to fight there, Lord of Mankind? Won't we break the webway?" Axis asked. "You misunderstand. The webway I carved here is unstable and cannot withstand our power. If you and I unleash even a fraction of our might here, this place will collapse. The consequences of such a collapse are beyond imagining. So we will travel through my passage to the ancient Eldar webway. Fighting there will not affect Holy Terra. Travel within the webway is vastly faster than ships. It takes mere minutes to reach places hundreds or thousands of light years away," the Lord explained. Axis grinned, and a golden aura flared around him, cracking the floor tiles beneath his feet and causing the palace hall to tremble. "Good. Let us go, Lord of Mankind. Let me see your power. Do not be hasty. I will allow Lionel Johnson, my daughter Kasha, and Valdor to observe. Everyone else will remain in the Imperial Palace on Holy Terra, the Lord said. The duel would be kept secret. The webway itself could hide them from the gaze of the Chaos Gods in the warp. They each nodded and followed the Lord to the base of the Golden Throne. The device opened onto a strange corridor bathed in light. All of you, follow me and do not become separated. If you get lost here, it will cause great trouble, the Lord warned. Once lost in the webway, one rarely returned. Those who did could be gone for millennia. Axis and the others acknowledged the warning and stepped in. The Lord of Mankind's body radiated golden psychic energy that shielded them as he led them forward into that otherworldly passage. Chapter 136, Super Transformation, Hot Battle, Fierce Battle, Super Fierce Battle. After an indeterminate time traveling through the webway, the Emperor led everyone into a vast expanse scattered with the ruins of ancient Eldar architecture. The region was as large as a star system, once a super city of the Eldar. Let's fight here. It's far enough from Holy Terra that nothing there will be affected, the Emperor said. He had chosen this place on purpose. Long ago, while traversing the webway, he had discovered this enormous abandoned quarter. Although deserted, the ancient buildings still exuded a lavish, almost obscene opulence, testimony to the Eldar, the race that inherited so much from the Old Ones and once dominated the material universe. One day he would raise mankind to comparable heights, not in the Eldar fashion, but like the Old Ones. He would lead humanity to build webway cities of its own. Axis nodded. The Emperor stationed Lionel Johnson, Captain General Valdor, and Kasha on a high platform of an Eldar building some distance away, and wrapped them in layers of psychic shielding. Then he stood in front of Axis. They exchanged a silent nod and simultaneously erupted into golden light. The gleaming glow of a Super Saiyan matched with the Emperor's golden psychic radiance. The two lights met and painted an unforgettable scene. Your golden form suits you, Axis. Use it in future fights. I can tell it's far stronger than your baseline, the Emperor observed, watching Axis's golden hair and aura with obvious approval. Humanity had always prized gold. On Terra it had meant royalty and wealth. Perhaps that was why golden hues fit them so naturally. His armor, his psychic power, both shone gold. This form boosts me 50-fold. I could go a little greener, but let's test this one first. Axis smiled with hard excitement and charged. He would probe the Emperor with Super Saiyan and only escalate to the transcended form if needed. In the webway, they should be able to keep Slaanesh at bay. The Dark Eldar used the webway to shield themselves from that predatory gaze. With the Emperor at his side, Axis felt safe. The Emperor's psychic power surged like a storm. Golden light condensed around him as if a god had descended. His voice was deep and majestic. As you wish, come. In an instant, both figures vanished from sight. Only a golden blur remained before a deafening explosion tore through the webway. The shockwave was so violent that Lion, Kasha, Valdor, and the others, watching tens of thousands of kilometers away, were knocked off their feet. For a long moment, the entire vista was a wash of gold as two afterimages collided again and again, unleashing terrible power, Axis's chi energy against the Emperor's psychic might. What is that? Valdor cried, staring at the distant maelstrom. Lionel Johnson's pupils constricted to pinpricks. One single clash already. The force they generated was beyond ordinary mortals. Even Lion could only follow fragments of their trajectories. My lord, he hasn't unleashed everything yet, Valdor called out. Nor has Axis, Kasha answered. Axis still had a trump card, the golden-green transformation he was holding back. The two combatants flickered through the webway like meteors. Each collision sent shockwaves that tore away great swathes of the ancient city. Axis's fists carried destructive chi. The Emperor's psychic shield stood like impenetrable ramparts. Long ago, when Russ first met the Emperor, Axis had fought him and had been unable to move even a finger of the Emperor. Now everything was different. The Emperor was forced to take Axis seriously. This is exhilarating, Axis laughed, and a heavy punch drove the Emperor back several thousand meters. This is the fight I wanted. A Saiyan's blood thrilled at battle. Axis was pouring the power of his Super Saiyan first form into the fight, forcing the Emperor on the defensive. Golden light bathed the webway. The Emperor steadied himself, surprise flickering in his eyes. "Axis, your strength exceeds my expectations." The boy's power outstripped that of a gene seed Primarch. The Emperor wondered if those Primarchs could match Axis at full tilt. Axis grinned and brought his hands together as brilliant energy began to coalesce. "Taste this!" A roaring energy wave, tens of thousands of meters across, unrolled like a battering ram, twisting space and pulverizing countless Eldar structures. The Emperor neither dodged nor flinched. He opened his hands and conjured a golden barrier that met Axis's attack. The collision tore at atoms. If this had happened over Holy Terra, the Imperial Palace would have been obliterated. When the dust settled, both fighters hung in the air, and a brilliant new light burned in the Emperor's eyes. "Axis, you have earned my attention." Axis felt the opponent's aura spike and trembled with exultation. "Yes, show me the true power of the Lord of Mankind." Wings of pure psychic light unfurled behind the Emperor as his form blurred into many dimensions at once. Axis pushed his chi to the edge. His golden aura nearly lit the entire webway. Two planet-shattering forces collided. For a moment, time itself seemed to hesitate. Then the central shockwave detonated. Their silhouettes braided like lightning. Where their fists and feet met, space itself seemed to tear. Each impact detonated with a deafening boom. Axis's blows were ruinous. The Emperor's psychic shields answered like unbreakable ramparts. "Not enough. Still not enough," Axis roared, his Saiyan blood fully ablaze. "Emperor, don't hold back. Show me your full power." A trace of approval crossed the Emperor's face. "That depends on your skill." Then the Emperor unleashed a storm. His eyes flared solid gold, his presence scaled to godlike heights. Psychic power unleashed, 30%. The previous exchanges had been intense, but the Emperor hadn't even used 30% of his strength. The webway trembled beneath a rolling golden storm. Axis's pupils shrank, then a fierce joy flooded him. "Then I'll show you," he roared. His golden aura swelled, muscles tensing, and he pushed further. "Super Saiyan, second stage." The change widened his musculature and sharpened his power. He surged like a living cannon. Clang, clang, clang. Their collisions blew apart ancient structures across the map. Kasha bolstered the protective wards around the observers, barely holding them steady against the aftershocks. Lion watched with a warrior's focus. "This is a contest of true strong ones," he murmured. Blows traded, shockwaves rolled, and Axis smashed the Emperor's chest with a punch. The Emperor blocked and countered with a psychic blast that hurled Axis into the ground. A crater tens of thousands of meters wide opened in the Eldar city. Axis shot back up, his aura intensifying. He had pushed Super Saiyan 1 to its absolute limit. Super Saiyan, full power. "Again," Axis demanded. The Emperor's lips curved faintly. Psychic power unleashed, 50%. His power bloomed like a star. The webway warped, golden torrents forming haloed rings around him. His voice boomed as if from the depths of the cosmos. "You will witness my wrath." When he had defeated the Void Dragon, he had revealed half his power before. Now his 50% felt even more overwhelming. Axis felt the pressure like a weight crushing his bones, but his battle intent only burned hotter. This was the opponent he craved. Ha! Axis's Saiyan genes surged free. He no longer held back his transcended Super Saiyan might. The golden aura picked up an emerald undertone. His hair lengthened and wilded, spiking into a golden-green cascade. His muscles swelled unnaturally. His body grew. The transformation hit, transcended Super Saiyan. A dark green storm roared outward. The webway seemed to lose its color. Axis's pupils disappeared. His eyes went pale white and his mouth twisted into a maniacal laugh. Golden-green energy licked around him, and his stature climbed to 3 meters. He radiated a chaotic, destructive, almost perverse aura, nothing like the previous Super Saiyan form. He looked like a god of ruin. From a distance, Kasha remained comparatively calm, but Lion and Valdor were rattled to the core. Terror, primitive and bone-deep, seized them, as if facing a cataclysm. Thoughts fled. "We're going to die. We're going to die." That was all that flashed through their minds. What is this? Is this Axis's true power? Are we doomed? Lion groaned, clinging to a shattered wall, his body trembling. "Don't be alarmed," Kasha said, forcing a smile as she reinforced their shields. "His transformation is terrifying on the surface, but it's a form he can control." Yet even she could not hide the strain as she added layers of protection. Axis laughed, feral and jubilant, and hurled himself at the Emperor. The Lord of Mankind did not underestimate him. He raised his psychic power to 80%. Axis, in transcended form, struck like a green thunderbolt. An elbow sent the Emperor deep into the crust of the Eldar city. The shockwave vaporized ruins across 100,000 square kilometers. Spiderweb cracks spread across the webway's barrier. The Emperor was driven onto the defensive. Axis's punches, charged with unimaginable force, broke through psychic barriers and began to gouge the Emperor's True One armor. The armor itself began to crack beneath those blows. The Emperor felt, with a thrill and a chill, that Axis's strength had reached an unfathomable level. This was no mere growth in muscle. This was a qualitatively different power. Valdor dropped to one knee. This isn't a fight. It's a cataclysm. Lion's voice came out ragged and small. Father is being suppressed? Chapter 137, Breaking Through Super Saiyan 2, Shattering Shinichi's Armor. Lion King could hardly imagine that his almost invincible, almost godlike father would be wounded, would be forced down by another being. He had expected that by the end of this fight, though Axis might cause a great deal of trouble, he would still fall to the Emperor. Now it seemed the Emperor might actually be defeated. This Axis child was a monster, an utter monster. There was a deep, terrifying evil within him. Even Lion King felt that Axis, like them, a gene seed Primarch, was a monster in human skin. On the observation platform, Valdor knelt, the visor of his custodian helm webbed with cracks. This is the power that can wound my lord? He muttered. Damn it, the Emperor had been injured and could only be watched from afar. Valdor's displeasure toward Axis was profound. Deep within the ruins of the Eldar city, the Emperor wiped red from the corner of his mouth, a rare solemnity in his eyes. The power Axis was unleashing exceeded his expectations, power that actually wounded him. It had been an age since anything like this had happened, so long that he had nearly forgotten the feeling. Roar! Axis unleashed his Super Saiyan power like a furious tide. A golden-green storm of ki swept through the webway. His muscles swelled to their limits. A feral grin split his face. He moved like a destructive beast freed of chains. In an instant, he vanished. The surrounding fabric of space tore open, leaving a black fissure. The next moment, his fist slammed into the Emperor's chest. Boom! The Emperor's psychic barrier shattered like glass. The true armor, fashioned from the most durable auramite in the universe, was dented by that blow. The Emperor flew back like a meteor, smashing through dozens of floating Eldar ruins before slamming into a giant tower-like structure. The armor's breastplate was split open. Armor that had been expected to fail only in the Horus Heresy was breached prematurely by Axis. Cough, cough! Blood ran from the corner of the Emperor's mouth. The transcended Super Saiyan's force had cut the Lord of Mankind. Ha-ha! Again, again! Axis roared, chasing after him. He condensed an energy sphere 1,000 meters across and hurled it into the ruins. The explosion obliterated a colossal swath of the Eldar city. The shockwave rippled through the webway. The distant observation platform shuddered. Valdor and Lion King had to kneel just to stay upright. For context, the Eldar webway cities were staggeringly vast on the scale of several planets. Cities there spanned entire star systems. Kamara contained multiple gigantic stars dragged into the webway. From the ruins, a brilliant pillar of golden light shot up as the Emperor rose, psychic power boiling around him, a halo of raw warp light burning bright. Psychic release 90%, he intoned. His voice no longer merely sounded, it vibrated through real space. He unleashed a level of power he had never used in battle, because no one in the real universe had ever been worthy of it. Now he had found someone who could force him to use everything he had. Axis laughed and charged. They collided again and again. Each strike and counterstrike shattered the space around them. The webway's structure began to destabilize as countless warp rifts opened. Axis's blows came like a storm. The Emperor's psychic barrier fractured and reformed, but his counterattacks were devastating. A single sweep of the Emperor's hand sent a psychic blade spanning the sky. Axis could not evade it. A deep wound lacerated his shoulder, bone visible, fresh red spraying forth. The injury did not slow Axis. If anything, it stoked his berserker fury. His attacks grew fiercer and his ki rose. The Emperor frowned. This opponent seemed to get stronger the longer he fought. The Emperor's face hardened. The easy conclusion, this was not a simple physical contest. He raised a hand and poured psychic power into it. An invisible golden binding seized Axis, pinning him as if every cell in his body bore unbearable weight. Axis staggered to his knees. Even his mind felt the pressure. The Emperor displayed raw ascendant power. To a psyker, physical laws were trivial. He could compress a star with psychic force without it collapsing into a black hole. Axis, the Emperor said, his voice cold and luminous, I admit your combat strength is formidable. If this were purely a contest of bodies, I might not best you, but my greatest weapon is not my flesh. His light gleamed with lethal serenity. So this is it, pushed to the limit, Axis said, eyes alight with a mad, hungry joy. A scion craved that feeling, being driven to break new limits. Stop, the Emperor warned. You are wounded, and I am sorely hurt. We cannot continue. The webway here will collapse. He increased the psychic pressure. Axis was bent beneath an unimaginable force. But to Axis, that pressure was irrelevant. A scion faced pressure to break through. He roared, channeled his ki, and let his rage run free. The Emperor's expression shifted to surprise. His psychic suppression was failing. How could this be? A power that had once subdued shards of the Void Dragon was being pushed back. The golden aura around Axis flared differently. Where it had rolled like flame before, it now thrust upward in jagged spikes. His hair stood straighter, sharper, the gold overtaking the green. Blue lightning cracked and danced across his form. His aura swelled until it eclipsed what it had been. Emperor, you saw my Super Saiyan power just now. This is Super Saiyan 2, Axis declared. The fight with the Emperor had finally pushed him into Super Saiyan 2, more than doubling his previous power. It was a state 100 times his normal self, stacked atop his transcended Super Saiyan form. The Emperor stared, incredulous. This child could still grow stronger? When he left Holy Terra, he had tuned Axis's modifications to the limit, and yet Axis's genes were wild and unpredictable. Only now did the full terrifying scope of that wildness reveal itself. The Great Ape's power had never merged with this new surge, and the golden Super Saiyan energy seemed tied to those strange cells the Emperor had once contemplated replicating. That replication had proved impossible by ordinary means. Axis had somehow strengthened those cells on his own. His potential had not been exhausted. Decades after the Emperor thought he had maximized him, Axis had grown even further. It was rare, almost unprecedented, for another being comparable in might to appear among humanity. Rarer still that he would be born naturally. Axis clasped his hands and formed a planet-destroying energy sphere, hurling it at the Emperor. The Emperor gathered his psychic force into a colossal golden vortex and devoured the sphere. Back to you, he roared, thrusting, and the energy reversed, hurtling toward Axis with even greater speed. A jade-green spherical barrier flared around Axis to block it, but the Emperor's counter was more than a simple rebound. The energy carried psychic force as well. The combined power enveloped Axis, producing a titanic explosion. He was struck by his own attack and blasted tens of thousands of kilometers away through floating Eldar structures, embedding himself deep in the ruins. Moments later, golden-green light spiked into the sky. Axis erupted from the wreckage, laughter wild, ki blazing so violently it ripped apart surrounding buildings. He emerged faster and stronger than before. They fought across every corner of the webway, from dizzying heights to shattered cities, from broken Eldar temples to drifting void islands. Their battle exceeded the laws of matter. Each collision made the webway itself tremble. Chapter 138. The Emperor is 100% psionic, cold, dark, and desperate. The moment their fists met, the explosion of energy leveled an area 1,000,000 miles across. The ground beneath them vaporized, revealing the webway's silver skeletal framework. Axis's arm bones cracked under the pressure. The Emperor's gauntlet was pulverized. Under Axis's furious assault, the Emperor's psychic shield shredded like tissue and he was sent hurtling away like a cannonball, smashing through countless floating Eldar obelisks. Axis materialized in front of him, clasped his hands, and with a hammer-like blow, slammed the falling Emperor into the ruined city below. A spray of blood burst from the Emperor's mouth. "This kid sure hits hard," the Emperor wheezed. "My sternum's shattered. If I weren't immortal, a normal man would be dead." Captain General Valdor's eyes flashed red. "My lord was injured to this extent? Axis, you damned!" The crustal plates of the webway fractured like brittle biscuits. A tsunami of molten rock shot tens of thousands of meters into the sky. The Eldar city planet Axis struck was being utterly annihilated. With each thunderous clash, their battle threatened to tear the ancient webway apart. "Good thing we aren't fighting near Holy Terra," Valdor muttered. "If this breaks, the consequences would be unimaginable." "It's getting worse. I must subdue Axis quickly, or this section of the webway will collapse," the Emperor said. "If the webway shatters, Chaos's servants could pour in and ruin every plan I've laid." He stopped restraining himself. "Forget it, Axis. You'll see all of my power." The Emperor let go. He poured everything into his psychic core and went completely open. Roar! Axis's roar shattered Eldar structures for 10,000 miles, and his golden-green life aura coalesced into a storm of materialized destruction. Space itself tore under the force, and Axis vanished and reappeared before the Emperor, throwing a punch with galaxy-shattering force. Psychic Power Unleashed, 100%. This time the Emperor's power was not radiant light, but an inky blackness. Cold, deathly, despairing. It was a darkness 100,000 times more malign than Axis's legendary Berserk aura, an absolute, implacable despair that robbed the mind. Axis's own presence had been terrifying, predatory. Now the Emperor's presence brought total hopelessness. The Emperor's hair bristled, though there was no wind, and a chilling aura flowed from him. This was no sacred light. It was the Emperor's true core, a trace of the Dark King's power. "Axis, the battle ends in an instant," the Emperor said, eyes like voids. "I cannot hold this for long. You thought you were dark? I'll show you the universe's true darkness, cold, despair, and death." His voice hammered through the real dimension, and the entire webway warped. His eyes devoured light. Every gesture shredded the fabric of space-time. His punch passed like a blade that even temporarily purified the warp itself. Axis's heart lurched. The blow pulverized him. His footing collapsed, his golden-green aura evaporated, and Axis's body reverted to normal as he fell from the sky. The Emperor caught him with one hand. The Emperor's 100% burst of power faded. The Dark King's influence recoiled. It was fortunate the exposure was brief. Anything longer and catastrophe would have followed. He shook his head, looked down at the unconscious Axis, and flew back toward Lionel Johnson, Kasha, and Valdor, carrying Axis in one arm. During the flight, his wounds knit visibly. Within moments, the Emperor was whole again. His shattered true armor mended and reassembled under his psychic will until he stood as before. Immortals, so long as they are not slain, heal almost instantly. Axis pried his eyelids open with difficulty. "Damn it, immortals are ridiculously cheap," he grinned weakly. "I fight half a day, nearly die, and you heal in the blink of an eye. Your recovery rivals Majin Buu's, maybe even worse." As the Emperor landed, Valdor lunged forward, power weapon raised to strike Axis's head. Righteous rage burned in him. Someone had harmed his lord. "Damn you, Axis. From this day you are expelled from the Adeptus Custodes." Valdor's swing was caught by the Emperor's hand, and he was thrown aside. "Stop, Valdor. What are you doing?" the Emperor said. "My lord, let me execute this villain who dared to injure you." Valdor snarled. "It was merely a spar," the Emperor said calmly. "Valdor, you should know that physical strikes like that cannot truly harm me." He had indeed been driven to blood and a shattered sternum, but to an immortal that was a brief, painless inconvenience, unless the attack was of forbidden warp origin. Even then, to genuinely wound him required the power of the Chaos Four gods. One alone would not suffice. "Father, are you all right?" Lionel Johnson stepped forward. Father had ultimately won. Axis was formidable, but the Emperor was stronger. Especially that last display. The cold, despairing darkness was like nothing the others had felt. "I'm fine," the Emperor said. "But this kid's a mess. Honestly, I enjoyed that. I've never fully unleashed like that before." Axis had already begun to shift his berserk aura into a healing life force. Over the last decades, he had been cultivating that life energy. It could heal others and himself. Recovery required energy, food, fuel, but Axis was badly battered. The Emperor's power had been overwhelming, particularly in that last, despairing form that bore the Dark King's mark. "You awake? How was the fight? Enjoy it?" the Emperor asked. "Loved it," Axis laughed hoarsely. Valdor snorted. Lion allowed a faint smile. The Emperor was unhurt. Kasha rushed forward, anxious, and helped Axis to his feet. Even in defeat, Axis's raw power was terrifying. Are you okay? She demanded. Don't worry, I'll even be fine enough to make babies with you tonight. Axis swayed, forced the grin, and gave a thumbs up. Stop saying things like that. Kasha flared, cheeks flushed and furious. You idiot! You fool! Valdor barked from the side. The Emperor intervened. Your life energy is an excellent healer. It's not as instantaneous as an immortal's, but with the modifications I installed, you'll recover in time. He glanced at Axis with a half smile. He had placed a life furnace inside Axis, a powerful, superhuman organ that could supply continual biological energy. It allowed a custodian to fight for months without rest. If Axis hadn't been knocked out by that final blow just then, he might have gone on for months. This was enjoyable. We'll fight again. I can tell your body can't yet support your soul strength. I can use your life energy to strengthen your physique, Axis said. Humph. I won't leave you alone with the Emperor in a room, Valdor muttered. It was a friendly spar, the Emperor said lightly. Both Axis and I are fine. You needn't be so tense or hold a grudge. He is the future of humanity, the second strongest human beside me. Show him respect. Valdor bowed his head and fell silent. The custodes obeyed whatever the Emperor decreed. One last thing, Axis, the Emperor said, eyes amused. From now on, you will not call me Emperor. You'll use another title. Do I have to explain your relationship with Kasha? He was deciding to give his daughter an identity. So call me Father, Axis said. What about Russ? It's just a title, the Emperor said. You can still call Russ Father if you prefer. Calling me Father is fine too. For an immortal who had wed women tens of thousands of years his junior and accepted their fathers as peers in name, the word held little literal meaning. All right then, Father. The Emperor nodded with satisfaction, then turned and departed for Holy Terra with Axis, Lion, Kasha, and Valdor. After they left, a figure in a clown suit appeared where the Emperor had stood. Truly terrifying, the clown murmured. Humanity has birthed another monster. Chapter 139, The Laughing God's Plan. Lets his genetic offspring achieve Super Saiyan transformation. What an admirable species. Maybe he really can lead humanity back to its golden age, or even beyond, muttered laughing god Chao Gaoki. Lately, humanity had been growing dominant. They fought across the galaxy, reclaimed lost territories, and even pushed their reach farther than before. The Iron Men rebellion millennia ago and the warp storm born from that monstrous birth centuries ago had shattered the fledgling Imperium. Chao Gaoqi had thought humanity doomed, another advanced civilization that would flare and fade. But then a golden figure rose, and suddenly all of humanity united under him. And the Eldari? Fragmented, broken. Some clung to life in Kamara, the webway city, torturing others for soul energy to avoid being consumed by that monster. Others developed grim paths in their craft worlds, leaning on spirit stones to protect souls from Slanesh. Still others collapsed into savagery. The Eldari had fallen. Humanity, by contrast, still had a chance. And now another golden figure had appeared. If these two met, Chao Gaoki shivered to consider the consequences. He smiled. Heh, that's not bad. With humans drawing the monster's attention, the Eldari get breathing room. Maybe this chi energy can sever the soul link between the Eldari and that monster. It's worth trying. The Eldari's worst problem was Slanesh's soul devouring. Outside the webway, without spirit stone wards and those extreme ascetic rituals, their souls were quickly preyed upon. But this child's chi energy disrupted warp power. Perhaps he held the key to their salvation. Fortunately, when the two fought, Qiaoqi had used his power to seal off the surrounding space, on top of the Emperor's own seals. That kept Kamara's denizens from witnessing the clash. Had they seen it, well, it would have been catastrophic. People blamed Slanesh on the Eldari's decadence, but how would the Chaos Gods spawned by humanity compare? Two golden titans of power were more terrifying than all the sacrifices in the webway. One radiated darkness and cold, bent on exterminating every race but humanity. The other exuded martial ferocity, less a god of war than the embodiment of combat itself. The blood god would take notice. They owed the clown a favor. Without him shielding them, Khorne and the other powers would have targeted them. A ripple beside the laughing god produced several figures in Harlequin motley, silhouettes of the clown troupe. Great laughing god, the Dark Eldar asked if something happened here. They felt intense energy fluctuations. Komorag itself trembled, one Harlequin reported. It's nothing, child. A few had a friendly spar, no harm done, Chiaoki said, narrowing his eyes. I'll keep your secret, for now. Then I'll test whether this chi can cure the soul devouring. Understood, great laughing god, the Harlequin answered, kneeling. Since the Eldari's fall, some had turned to Chiaoki's creed, hoping his ultimate joke might end Slanesh. I have a new mission for you. Infiltrate and learn what you can. But do it quietly. Do not give him any cause for hostility. Chiaoqi needed a way to speak to the new Golden One. That chi energy was unlike warp might, something real, like life force but destructive. Contacting the new Golden under the Elder's nose would be dangerous, but his Harlequins could manage it. Understood. The clown troupe serves you, they replied, voice solemn. Laughing god, Chiaoqi left the ruins with a tinkling laugh and returned to his black library. He would have to clean up after these two reckless ones again. Meanwhile, the Emperor, Axis, and the others had returned to the palace on Holy Terra and sealed the webway gate once more. Only when the gate was fully closed did the Emperor allow himself to exhale. The duel with Axis had been perilous. He'd acted rashly, and the memory left him uneasy. If those chaos powers had discovered them, the consequences would have been dire. Axis could not be hidden in the palace forever. Sooner or later, his presence would attract notice. But Axis's power now rivaled the Emperor's, and his chi energy suppressed warp phenomena, making it hard for the four Chaos Champions to sway him. The Emperor had also had Kasha instruct Axis about chaos. He understood its horror. Valdor, what happened today is the Imperium's highest secret. You must tell no one, the Emperor said to Captain General Valdor. Valdor's hostility toward Axis, fresh from the clash, could spread through the Custodes, and the Emperor would not allow that. Axis was an asset to humanity's future. I understand, my lord. I was on duty in the palace the whole time, Valdor replied, kneeling on one knee. Though he disliked Axis for wounding the Emperor, Valdor would obey the Emperor's command. The Adeptus Custodes served the Emperor himself, not the Imperium. The Emperor nodded and instructed some Custodes to prepare abundant food for Axis's recovery. Then he issued a gag order on the day's events and used his psychic power to wipe the memories of several Custodes, leaving only Lionel Johnson, Captain General Valdor, his daughter Kasha, and Axis aware of the truth. A steady stream of provisions reached the palace. Axis ate ravenously. The food converted into biological energy and was refined by his life forge into chi energy, which then flowed into every cell, healing and rebuilding him. After a day and night of feeding, Axis's wounds were essentially gone. He was vigorous again. The Emperor subtly felt that Axis had grown stronger than yesterday. Axis, have you grown significantly since yesterday? I can sense it, the Emperor said as he sat beside him. That's right, Axis replied. We Saiyans are a warrior people. Everything is for battle. Each time we revive from near death, our combat power jumps. We evolve through fighting. It was his first clear use of the Saiyan passive. He felt his strength climb enormously, yet he still dreaded the Emperor's Black King form. Until he could kill the Emperor's Black King instantly, he wouldn't challenge him again. Better to aim for Super Saiyan 3, or even 4, for safety. Your gene seed is powerful, but your chi energy cannot be replicated, nor passed to your descendants, the Emperor said with a sad tone. Even if Axis and Kasha married, a child would inherit Axis's blood and the Emperor's, but not the chi. The Emperor had expected the child's potential to rival a Primarch's gene seed and looked forward to a true grandson. You two have been together nearly 30 years. Has Kasha ever been pregnant? The Emperor asked bluntly. Axis choked on his food. Kasha, embarrassed, handed him water. Father, please, have some consideration. We are not young, but we still take precautions. She protested. They had always been careful. If there had been an issue, or if either of them were at fault, a child would have been born long ago. Kasha wanted a life for any child that didn't have to hide, so she insisted Axis achieve gene seed Primarch status and she reclaim her eldest princess standing before having children. I understand. From today, you will stop all protections and have a child for me. In a few months, I will reveal your true status to the Imperium, the Emperor ordered. Yes, father, Kasha replied, smiling. And the problem of passing your gene seed to offspring needs solving, the Emperor went on. I have an idea, but I want to hear yours. My idea is simple, Axis said, licking his lips. a small surgery to remove the tail so they won't turn into great apes. Before implanting any gene seed, baptize the child in chi. That should satisfy the gene's craving for chi and produce a perfect gene seed. Lionel Johnson had likely already reported the perfect gene seed matter to the Emperor. The Emperor's good brother had been diligent. "Very well. Here is my approach," the Emperor said. "When I extracted your gene seed before, it was after your transformation completed. This time I will re-extract it, but you must not be in your normal state. You must transform into that golden-haired form, the regular Super Saiyan, not the berserk green-gold type, and fill yourself with a peaceful life aura while I extract the seed. The results should be unexpected." The Super Saiyan form Axis used carried a stable aura. To achieve it, one needed composure and a calm mindset. In that state, the special S cells permeate the body. Extracting gene seed while in that form could produce an altogether different cellular tissue. Gene seed cultivated from it might actually grant his descendants the ability to become Super Saiyans. It wouldn't multiply strength by 50 or replicate Chi's amplification, but a 4- or 5-fold increase in combat power seemed plausible. "You mean my gene seed offspring could also transform into Super Saiyans?" Axis asked, surprised. The Emperor really did think big. "Exactly. You become Super Saiyan, we saturate your cells with peaceful life energy, and I extract the gene seed. I am over 90% certain it will work," the Emperor said, confident, his pre-ignition backing him. Chapter 140, Perfect S Cells, Super Race Gene Seed. The Emperor was truly whimsical. Space Marines mastering Super Saiyan transformation? It sounded absurd. Super Saiyan wasn't something you could just hand out. For an ordinary Saiyan to reach it, they had to undergo brutal training, achieve a calm mental state, and build up S cells. Then, in a moment of extreme rage while keeping their wits, the transformation could occur. It was exceptionally difficult. Super Saiyan isn't as simple as you think. Even a simplified version, I don't think would work, Axis said, looking at the Emperor. "I know all this," the Emperor replied. "When I modified you, I studied your cells closely. Ki is crucial for Saiyans, but S cells, for you, increase raw physical output rather than Chi. Theoretically, my plan can succeed. I also discovered something peculiar. S cells have an unusually high affinity for humans. They integrate much more readily with Earthling physiology than with pure Saiyan tissue." Axis fell silent. The Emperor was right. S cells demanded calm and logic to control, qualities that clashed with Axis's genetically wild, furious temperament, but those same qualities made S cells unusually compatible with human cells. In earlier experiments, the Emperor had seen how Axis's other cells tended to assimilate everything around them, but S cells behaved differently. They fused. That's why some half-Saiyans, Trunks and Goten for example, could become Super Saiyan at 6 or 7, the Emperor continued. Their fathers had huge S-cell reserves, and their human mothers tempered those S-cells. For them, the transformation could occur without the usual trigger of rage. S-cells are special. When activated, they massively boost combat power. You had dormant S-cells, Axis, difficult to extract. They only awaken during transformation. "How do we test this?" Axis asked. "First you transform," the Emperor said. "Then we extract." "Wait, you want me to stay Super Saiyan continuously?" "Yes. Maintain the Super Saiyan state for a month. Eating, sleeping, everything. The human metabolic cycle means a month will let your SES cells reach peak activity and flush out old cells. The cells we extract this way will be the purest and most concentrated." Axis grimaced. He had held Super Saiyan full power for stretches before, but remaining in that state nonstop for a month, even through sleep, was extreme. How could he control the transformation while unconscious? "You can," the Emperor said. "Your super brain can rest half and control the body with the other half. I designed it for that. Have you developed your body properly?" The special super brain the Emperor had installed could indeed keep one hemisphere active while the other rested. Reluctantly, Axis agreed. He first shifted to Super Saiyan full power, then learned, under the Emperor's guidance, to let one half of his brain sleep while the other retained control. It took only a few days to master. At night, one half watched over the transformation, the other rested. To his surprise, it worked. Maintaining the form felt progressively easier, and the drain on his ki lessened. The Emperor had been right. Because normal humans lacked ki, Axis needed to minimize the S-cell's dependence on it. He repeated the routine for a month. Slowly, Super Saiyan full power became his baseline. Despite the half-brain rest, the month left him somewhat fatigued, but it paid off. The energy cost of the standard Super Saiyan form dropped further, and Axis perfected Super Saiyan 2. A month later, the Emperor and Micardo arrived to do the extraction. The Imperial Regent personally oversaw the procedure. Using a special adamantium needle and, crucially, after suppressing Axis's ki to very low levels, they were able to pierce his defenses and harvest the S-cells. Axis's body carried such pervasive chi that without suppression, nothing sharp could penetrate him. Disintegration fields and power weapons would fail. Once the S-cells were out, Axis finally exhaled and reverted to normal. "You two get on with the gene seed," he said, yawning. "I need to sleep. 3 days." "No problem," the Emperor said. "In 3 days, your gene seed should be complete." After Axis left, the two old men set to work. The Emperor produced the stack of primordial blood, the repository of genetic samples from the 20 gene seed Primarchs, and prepared to add a new entry, the 21st sample, taken from Axis's Super Saiyan S-cells. Micardo examined the harvested tissue with a mix of awe and professional concern. "These S-cells contain tremendous energy. They can amplify ordinary cells massively," he said. "An initial burst could multiply combat power 50-fold, later surges 100-fold. That isn't even necessarily the limit. If an ordinary person's strength increased 100 times, they could kill a space marine instantly," the Emperor mused. "That's the problem," Micardo said. "The body must be able to withstand such amplification. If not, the host cells would be destroyed. An ordinary body might disintegrate genetically under anything beyond a small multiplier. Only a monster physique, like a Saiyan's, could survive these boosts." "The potential is enormous," the Emperor agreed. "If we can make the host stronger enough to endure the amplification, it could be limitless." "We should reduce the proportion of these cells," Micardo advised. "Astartes' bodies are far tougher than humans, but they aren't invulnerable. I estimate they can only bear about a 5-fold amplification before hitting their limits." "That's a theoretical ceiling," the Emperor said. "We shouldn't use it as a baseline. Even doubling a space marine's strength would be enormous." "Then set safeguards," Micardo said. "By default, let the gene seed provide a 2-fold boost. If a marine shows the talent to go further, the seed can allow progression up to a maximum of 5-fold. After a moment's thought, the Emperor approved. It was the prudent approach, a safe, useful baseline with room for exceptional development. They began the delicate work of integrating Axis's cells into gene seed form. 3 days later, small, perfectly round, smooth, fleshy spheres lay in the culture dishes. The new gene seed had formed beautifully, no warp corruption at all, since its origin was purely biological. The Emperor beamed at the flawless samples. "We did it, Micardo," he said. "The quality is excellent. We can begin Astartes implantation." "We should test," Micardo said. "Russ said some of his gene seed could be replaced with Axis's. If we modify existing Astartes, swapping thyroid and chest gene seed rather than starting from scratch, it will save years. Starting over would take 6 to 10 years. The Emperor nodded. Using willing Astartes as carriers would accelerate the program. The new Axis-derived gene seed promised a way to amplify the Space Marine's crawling power in a controlled, non-warp-tainted form and potentially create something unprecedented.